He thought calling me lazy would make me do more. Instead, I called his bluff. We split the chores exactly 50-50, and the experiment in fairness didn't just backfire. It revealed the massive, crushing weight of invisible work and nearly broke us. My boyfriend, Mark, and I have been together for 3 years. We have a good relationship. Or at least I thought we did. We love each other, we make each other laugh, and we've built a comfortable little life in our apartment. But a quiet, insidious problem had been growing between us, a problem so common that most of us just accept it as normal. It's the problem of invisible work. And it took one single, carelessly thrown word for that invisible problem to become explosively visible. It was a Tuesday night. I just finished a 10-hour workday, fought traffic for 45 minutes, stopped at the store to grab stuff for dinner because I noticed we were out of olive oil and chicken, came home, put the groceries away, fed our cat Jasper, changed out of my work clothes, and was just about to start cooking. Mark had been home for about an hour, unwinding by playing video games. I walked into the living room, probably with a sigh I didn't even notice, and he paused his game, looked over at me and said it. "You seem tired. You've been kind of lazy today, huh?" Lazy, the word just hung there. I stared at him, my mind flipping through a mental Rolodex of everything I had already done that day, everything I was about to do, and everything I was already planning for the rest of the week. The trip to the dry cleaner on Wednesday, the reminder to call his mom for her birthday on Thursday, scheduling our cat's vet appointment. It was a mental list that never, ever ended. And he called me lazy. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. A strange, almost unnerving calm washed over me. This was a moment of truth. My response wouldn't be an argument, it would be a proposal. "You're right," I said, my voice perfectly even. "Maybe I am, so let's fix it. Starting tomorrow, we divide everything. Exactly 50-50, not just the chores you see, but everything. The planning, the organizing, the remembering will be true equals." He smirked, completely oblivious to the cliff he was about to step off. "Deal," he said, turning back to his game. "Should be easy enough." And that's how our little experiment began. An experiment in perfect mathematical fairness that would teach us more about our relationship and the unseen forces that hold a household together than 3 years of just living together ever had. It was an education, and let me tell you, the tuition was steep. Before I get into the glorious, chaotic mess of our 50-50 experiment, I need to paint a picture of the before. On the surface, things looked pretty standard. We both worked full-time. We split the big bills, and if you'd asked Mark, he would have told you he was a great, helpful partner. He did his share. He'd take out the trash when I asked. He'd empty the dishwasher if he saw it was clean. He'd even cook sometimes, usually on a weekend, and it was always treated like a grand, praiseworthy event. But that's the thing about the division of labor in most households. It's an iceberg. What he saw, what he acknowledged as work, was the tiny, visible tip. Taking out the trash is a 5-minute task. But who was the one who noticed the bag was full, made sure we had extra bags under the sink, and remembered to wheel the big bin to the curb on trash day? That was me. That's the 90% of the iceberg that's underwater. That's the mental load. I was the household's project manager, its CEO, its walking, talking calendar. I managed the inventory of our pantry, our fridge, and our cleaning supplies. I knew we were low on paper towels and that Mark's favorite coffee pods needed to be reordered. I planned our meals for the week, not just so we'd have something to eat, but so groceries wouldn't go bad and we'd stay within a budget. I was the one who remembered our friend's housewarming party was next Saturday and that we needed to buy a gift. I was the one who noticed the cat scratching his ear more than usual and made a mental note to check for ear mites. I was the one who kept track of when the bills were due, even the ones from his account, just to be sure. This wasn't just a list of tasks. It was a constant, low-grade hum of mental effort. The unpaid, unacknowledged, and deeply exhausting job of managing a life. And when I tried to bring it up in the past, he'd get confused. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it, he'd say. But that was the problem. The work isn't just doing the thing. It's the remembering, the planning, and the noticing in the first place. Asking me to delegate every single task was just adding another job to my already full plate. Manager of his responsibilities. So that Tuesday night, after he called me lazy, I knew explaining was no longer an option. I had to show him. The next morning, I woke up with a steely resolve. I grabbed a whiteboard from our office. When Mark came into the kitchen for coffee, I was waiting. "Good morning," I said, with a cheerfulness that was slightly terrifying. "Time to make our new system official." I placed the whiteboard on the table. At the top, I wrote, "The Great 50-50 Experiment." "Okay," I began. "Let's list out everything, every single thing that has to happen for our lives to run." He chuckled. "You mean like dishes and laundry?" "Oh, it's so much more than that," I said, my smile unwavering. I started writing. First, the obvious stuff: cooking, dishes, laundry, taking out trash, cleaning the kitchen, cleaning the bathroom, vacuuming. He nodded along, looking confident. I divided them neatly. I got cooking Monday, Wednesday, Friday. He got Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. I got the bathroom, he got the kitchen. Fair. But then I kept writing. A new section: planning and management. Meal planning, grocery list creation, grocery shopping, monitoring household supplies, paying bills, I listed each one. Scheduling appointments, vet, dentist, car, holiday, birthday planning, social calendar management. His smile started to falter. "What is social calendar management?" "It's knowing my sister's birthday is in 2 weeks, so we need to send a card. It's remembering your coworker's barbecue is next month and RSVPing. It's making dinner reservations." I continued, a new section: pet care. Feeding Jasper, cleaning the litter box, playing with Jasper, scheduling vet visits. Another section: maintenance. Watering plants, noticing a light bulb is out and replacing it, organizing mail. By the time I was done, the whiteboard was covered. What he thought was 10 items was closer to 50, and many of my items, like meal planning, weren't single tasks but complex projects. I looked at him. The smug confidence was gone, replaced by a dawning horror. He was staring at the board as if it were written in a foreign language. "This is a lot," he mumbled. "Yes," I said, "it is. This is the whole iceberg, so let's divide it fair and square." We spent the next 30 minutes negotiating like it was a corporate merger. He argued that meal planning should be part of cooking, but I held firm. "No," I explained patiently. "Cooking is the execution. Planning is the strategy. They are two separate jobs." We used 2 different colored markers, pink for me, blue for him, to assign every item. On paper, it looked perfectly fair. "So," I said, capping my marker, "the rules are simple. You are 100% responsible for your tasks: conception, planning, and execution. You can't ask me for reminders. I am not your manager. I am not your assistant. I'm your equal partner, and I'll be focusing exclusively on my half." He took a deep breath. "Okay, I can do this. How hard can it be?" Oh, my sweet, naive Mark. He had no idea. The first official day was a Thursday. It was Mark's day to cook. It was also his job to do the grocery shopping for his assigned meals, a task he'd scoffed at. How hard is it to buy food? I went about my day with a strange lightness. For the first time in years, my brain felt quiet. I wasn't mentally scanning the fridge on my commute home. My only job for dinner was to show up and eat it. It was thrilling. I got home at 6 p.m. Mark was already in the kitchen looking determined, a recipe for chicken parmesan on his phone. "I'm on it," he announced. "Great, I'm going to go clean the bathroom," I smiled. I happily retreated, put on a podcast, and got to work. It took me 25 minutes. As I was finishing, I heard a symphony of destruction from the kitchen. Clanging, muttered curses, and then a loud ow. I walked out to find a scene of culinary carnage. Breadcrumbs all over the floor. A trail of egg yolk dripping down the cabinet. Mark was holding his finger under the faucet. "Are you okay?" I asked, forcing myself to stay neutral. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "This chicken is slippery." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. My every instinct was to jump in, take over, and fix it. But I couldn't. The rules were the rules. "Okay, well, let me know when dinner is ready," I said, and went to sit on the couch with a book. An hour later, dinner was served. The chicken was edible, a bit dry and slightly undercooked. The pasta was a single, congealed lump because he'd forgotten to stir it, but he'd done it. "See," he said, beaming, completely oblivious to the trashed kitchen behind him. "Told you I could do it." I just nodded and ate. The real test came after dinner. Kitchen cleanup was also his job. He looked at the mountain of pots, pans, and bowls, the sauce splattered on the backsplash, the breadcrumb-covered floor. His triumphant expression evaporated. "I'll get to it later," he said, slumping onto the couch. "Okay," I replied and kept reading. The next morning, the mess was still there. Every pot, every cent. Icky utensil was exactly where he left it. A crust had formed on the marinara sauce. It was disgusting. Normally, I would have seethed, cleaning it all myself while my resentment grew. But this time was different. It wasn't my job, not my problem. I calmly navigated the disaster zone, made my coffee, and got ready for work. It was my day to cook, but I had planned a simple meal, a large salad with grilled salmon. All the ingredients were neatly stored in my section of the fridge. When Mark came into the kitchen, he stared at the mess. "Oh," he said, "I forgot." "That's your territory," I said cheerfully. "Don't forget you're also in charge of the internet bill today. It's on the board." I left for work, feeling a strange mix of anxiety and liberation. The anxiety came from my need for order. The liberation came from realizing I was no longer responsible for it. That evening, I came home to a miraculously clean kitchen. Not perfect, there were streaks on the counter, but a vast improvement. He was on the couch, looking exhausted. "Cleaning the kitchen is a lot harder than it looks," he admitted. "I know," I said. I then made my elegant, simple dinner. It took me 20 minutes and used one pan. As we ate, I saw him looking at my plate, then at his memory of the lumpy pasta, and a flicker of something, maybe respect, passed through his eyes. He was starting to see that efficiency wasn't laziness. It was a skill developed over years of practice. The weekend was his next big test. His Saturday chores included vacuuming and, the big one, doing his own laundry. For as long as we'd lived together, I had always done the laundry. It was just easier. I was the keeper of the laundry knowledge. He was about to learn that laundry isn't just about pushing a button. It's a science, and he was about to fail his first exam. Saturday morning arrived. I watched Mark from the corner of my eye as I did my own chores, which included dusting and the mental load task of financial planning. An hour of reviewing our budget, a quiet task he barely registered as work. Mark, meanwhile, gathered all his dirty clothes into one giant hamper. No sorting. Whites, darks, his new red gym shirt, my delicate beige blouse that had ended up in his pile, it all went in together. I had to physically restrain myself from shouting a warning. But he was the sole proprietor of his laundry. He had to learn. He lugged the hamper down to the laundry room. 45 minutes later, he returned proud. Phase 1 complete. An hour after that, he went to move the clothes to the dryer. This is where things went from questionable to catastrophic. He grabbed the entire wet, tangled mass, threw it in, and cranked the heat to volcano, assuming hotter meant faster. He came back upstairs and settled in for another round of video games. When the dryer buzzed, he leisurely went to retrieve his clothes. The silence that followed was profound. He was gone for a long time. Finally, he trudged back up the stairs, not with a hamper, but with his arms full of a sad, shrunken pile of clothes. He looked like a soldier returning from a lost battle. He didn't say a word. He just laid the casualties out on the couch. First, his favorite wool sweater, a Christmas gift from his mother. It was now the size of a toddler's t-shirt, stiff and matted, ruined. Next, his white work shirts. All three were now a delicate, splotchy shade of pink. The new red shirt had bled its color over everything. And then I saw it. My beautiful, cream-colored silk blouse, an expensive piece I loved. It was now a wrinkled, grayish-pink shadow of its former self. He looked at me, his eyes wide with panic. "I don't understand what happened," he whispered. "I followed the instructions." "Did you?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm as I picked up the doll-sized sweater. "Did you read the tag on this that says, 'Hand wash only, lay flat to dry'?" He stared at it, then back at me. "There are instructions on the clothes." This was a man who had reached the age of 29 without knowing that clothing had care labels. I felt a dizzying mix of fury, pity, and bizarre vindication. This was the invisible work made visible. It wasn't just throwing things in a machine. It was asterisk knowing. It was paying attention. It was the thousands of little data points I had stored in my brain, data points he didn't even know existed. The financial cost was easily over $200, but the emotional cost was far greater. He was, for the first time, face to face with the real-world consequences of his incompetence. "This," I said, holding up my ruined blouse, "is why I've always done the laundry. Not because I love it, but because I know how to do it right. This is part of the job." He just sat there, surrounded by his pink shirts and shrunken sweater, looking utterly defeated. I don't think he saw a nagging girlfriend. He saw a project manager whose expertise he had not only taken for granted, but mocked. The smugness of Tuesday night was a distant memory. The laundry incident marked a turning point. Mark's confidence was shattered, replaced by a sullen frustration. The experiment was no longer a game. It was a daily confrontation with his own inadequacy. Monday came. On the whiteboard under his name, "Cook dinner, plan and shop for Tuesday's dinner, and pay credit card bill." I came home to find him staring into the open fridge. "There's nothing to eat," he declared. "It's your day to cook," I said. "Did you go shopping this weekend?" That was another one of his new jobs. He'd completely forgotten. The mental step of asterisk planning ahead was a muscle he'd never exercised. My side of the fridge was stocked. His was a wasteland. He ended up ordering a pizza. As he was on the phone, I gently pointed to the whiteboard. "Don't forget the credit card bill." He groaned, "I'll do it later." "The due date is today," I said and walked away. I had created the list. I was not going to be his human alert system. My brain was the safety net, and now that net was gone. The next day he got an email. "Your payment is past due. A $35 late fee." He was in a foul mood when I got home. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "A late fee for being 1 day late." "Yes," I said, "that's how due dates work." His frustration was palpable. He was starting to feel the stress I had lived with for years, the constant, low-level anxiety of juggling a dozen responsibilities. He was used to his world running smoothly, never realizing I was the one oiling all the gears. His half of the apartment was also descending into chaos. A greasy film was building up on the stove. The sink had a permanent collection of dirty glasses. My areas, the living room and bathroom, were pristine. The contrast was stark. On Wednesday, I walked in to find him on the couch surrounded by cleaning supplies, looking at the floor like it was an unsolvable puzzle. He had bought the wrong kind of cleaner for our hardwood floors. The entire floor was now a streaky, tacky mess. He looked up at me, his face a mask of defeat. "I can't do this," he said, his voice cracking. "I just make everything worse." He was genuinely overwhelmed. He was experiencing the specific kind of burnout that comes from feeling incompetent and perpetually behind. It was the feeling I knew all too well. "I know it's hard," I said, my voice softer than it had been all week. "No, you don't understand," he said. "It's not just the cleaning, it's everything. It's having to remember it all. As soon as I finish one thing, I realize I forgot 3 others. My brain is full. I can't think straight." He had finally articulated it. The mental load. He had finally felt the crushing weight of that invisible part of the iceberg. The experiment had succeeded, but I was starting to worry about the collateral damage. We were barely speaking. The shared joy that was the foundation of our life together was gone. I started to wonder if being right was worth losing us. The breaking point came on Friday, a perfect storm of forgotten tasks and mounting stress. My parents were scheduled to stop by for an hour that evening. A low-key visit, but my mom notices things. A clean apartment is a sign you have your life together. According to the whiteboard, the pre-guest cleanup was Mark's responsibility. His chores, tidy common areas and cook dinner. I left for work that morning with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I was trusting the system. I walked through the door at 6:30 p.m. My parents were due at 7:00. The apartment was a disaster zone, a physical manifestation of his week-long mental collapse. The pizza box from Monday was still there. The sticky residue was still on the kitchen floor, now with added cat hair. Greasy pots were stacked by the sink. And there, in the center of the chaos, was Mark. He was standing in the kitchen, surrounded by half-chopped vegetables and raw chicken. He had a frantic look in his eyes and a smear of soy sauce on his forehead. He looked up as I walked in, his face a mixture of terror and shame. I lost track of time," he stammered. I looked from the mess to the raw food to the clock. 25 minutes until my parents arrived. The knot in my stomach turned to ice. The scientist in me vanished, replaced by a person filled with white-hot rage and embarrassment. "You lost track of time?" I asked, my voice dangerously low. "Mark, look at this place, it's a pigsty, and you haven't even started cooking." "I was going to clean, I was prepping the food first," he shot back, his voice high-pitched with stress. "Prepping? They will be here in 20 minutes. What were you thinking?" "I don't know," he yelled, throwing the knife down on the counter. "I can't think okay. My brain is full. It's full of remembering to take out the trash and trying to cook and feeding the cat and knowing your parents are coming and trying to clean this stupid sticky floor. I can't do it. I can't do all of it." And then it happened. He leaned over the counter, put his face in his hands, and his shoulders started to shake. He was crying. Not just a few tears, but deep, ragged, soul-crushing sobs of utter defeat. I stood there frozen. I'd seen this man cry maybe twice in our relationship. This was a complete breakdown. The sound of his crying echoed in the messy apartment. It was the sound of a man who had finally, truly understood. My anger evaporated, replaced by a profound, aching sadness. This wasn't a victory. It was a tragedy. The experiment had worked, but it had broken him. The doorbell rang. All I could do was stare at the crying man in my disaster of a kitchen, realizing that proving I was right was the most hollow victory I could have ever imagined. I opened the door, put on a brittle smile, and told my parents we were in the middle of a cleaning frenzy. I hugged them, accepted their confused sympathies, and promised to call them tomorrow, practically shoving them back out the door. The visit lasted less than 3 minutes. My only focus was Mark. I found him sitting on a kitchen chair, his head in his hands. I pulled up a chair across from him and just let the moment sit. Finally, he looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." And I knew he meant it. He wasn't just sorry for the mess. He was sorry for the last 3 years. "I know you didn't," I said softly. "I honestly thought you were just better at this stuff," he continued, his voice thick with shame. "Like it came easily to you. I thought I was helping when I did the dishes. I never, not once, thought about who made the list to buy the dish soap. I never thought about the thinking, all the asterisk thinking." There it was, the invisible, relentless cognitive work. "There's a name for it," I said. "It's called the mental load." I explained it to him, how it's the project management of the entire household, a real, demanding, 24/7 job I'd been doing for free. "The problem was never that you wouldn't help," I said. "The problem was that you saw yourself as my helper, not as my equal partner with equal ownership." I could see the understanding dawning in his eyes. Every failure he'd had this week was a perfect case study. The disastrous grocery trip wasn't about shopping. It was about the failure to plan asterisk. The laundry incident wasn't about the machine. It was about the failure to notice the details. The late bill wasn't laziness. It was a failure of his mental calendar, a calendar I had been managing for him. "When you called me lazy," I said gently, "it was the most invalidating thing you could have said, because you were completely blind to the hardest work I do. You only saw the moments I was resting and thought that was my baseline. You didn't see I was resting because I was exhausted from all the work you couldn't see." He started to cry again, quietly this time. "I feel like such an idiot and a jerk. I put all of that on you, and I didn't even know I was doing it. I just expected it." "A lot of people do," I admitted. "Society often expects women to be the managers of the home, even when we work just as many hours. But expectation doesn't make it right. It just makes the burnout quieter until it explodes." We talked for 2 more hours, the most honest and painful conversation we've ever had. He admitted that my efficiency wasn't magic. It was expertise born of necessity. I talked about how lonely I had been, feeling less like a partner and more like a parent. It was never about the chores. It was about feeling seen, valued, and truly supported. By the end of the night, the whiteboard was no longer a weapon. It was evidence. The experiment born of anger had nearly destroyed us, but in the rubble, we had found a foundation of truth to rebuild on. The next morning, we erased the whiteboard, every line. It felt like a surrender, but it was actually a graduation. A rigid 50-50 split doesn't work because life isn't 50-50. It's messy. The goal isn't a perfect score, but equity in effort and peace of mind. We built a new system based on ownership. We were inspired by Eve Rodsky's asterisk fair play method, where for every task, one person has full responsibility, conception, planning, and execution. The person who owns groceries owns the entire process, from noticing what's needed to buying it. No more delegating. We dealt out the tasks again. Mark voluntarily took full ownership of all things food-related, planning, shopping, and cooking. He wanted to learn how to do it well. I took laundry. My silk blouses are much safer. He took full ownership of our finances, not just paying bills but tracking our budget, a huge mental load off my plate. We even scheduled a 15-minute check in every Sunday night to sync up and make sure the division still felt fair. We also adopted Brené Brown's idea that a partnership is ver 50-50, but you should always strive for a combined 100%. Some days, he only has 20% to give, and I have to be ready to bring 80%. And if we both only have 20%, then we acknowledge it and agree to be kind to each other and let the non-essential stuff slide. It's about communication and empathy, not scorekeeping. It's been 3 months. Our apartment is cleaner than ever. Mark has become a surprisingly good cook, but the biggest change is the atmosphere. The tension is gone. My brain is quieter. I feel like I have a true partner. He sees the work now. He'll notice the cat's water bowl is low. He'll be the one to say, "Hey, we should probably schedule that dentist appointment soon." He's taking ownership. The experiment nearly broke us, but it forced us to confront an uncomfortable truth about how we value different kinds of labor. It taught him empathy, and it taught me that my exhaustion was valid. We had to tear our system down to rebuild it into something that could last. It turns out that fairness in a relationship isn't about a perfectly balanced scale. It's about both people feeling that they are carrying the weight of a shared life together, side by side. This was our story, and it was a difficult but necessary journey. I know this dynamic is something so many people struggle with, so I want to ask you, how do you and your partner handle the division of labor? Have you ever had to confront the issue of invisible work in your relationships? Share your experiences and your systems in the comments below. Let's talk about it, because these conversations are how we all learn to build stronger, more equitable partnerships. Before we jump into next story, if you're a fan of stories about betrayal, resilience, and finding strength when things get tough, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. You don't want to miss what's coming next. All right, let's get into it. My wedding day was perfect. I mean, truly perfect. The flowers, the music, my dress, everything was exactly how I dreamed it would be. The whole place smelled like peonies and roses, mixed with the happy chatter of our friends and family. My heart was just full. I thought it might actually burst. But then, as I was walking through the reception hall, I saw something in a dimly lit corner that shattered everything. It was my best friend, my maid of honor, in a passionate embrace with someone she absolutely shouldn't have been with. In that 1 second, I knew my perfect day was about to turn into a complete nightmare, and I had to figure out how to confront her without blowing up my own wedding. To really get the scale of this betrayal, you have to understand my friendship with Jessica. It wasn't just a friendship, it was a sisterhood. We'd been inseparable for 20 years. ever since third grade when she shared her lunch with me because I'd forgotten mine. She was the one I trusted with my diaries, the one who styled my outfits for first dates, and the shoulder I cried on after my first heartbreak. So when I met Liam, she was my biggest cheerleader. "He's the one, Chloe," she told me right after they met, her eyes literally sparkling for me. "I've never seen you look at someone that way." And she was right. Liam was everything I'd ever wanted. He was kind and patient, and he had this laugh that could make even my worst day feel small. Our love story felt like a fairy tale, and Jessica was there for every single chapter. When Liam proposed on a cliff overlooking the ocean, Jessica was hiding in the bushes with a camera, sobbing with joy while she snapped pictures. It was never even a question who my maid of honor would be. It was always going to be her. The wedding planning was just an extension of our friendship. We spent weekends looking at venues, tasting so much cake we felt sick, and arguing over the perfect shade of blue for the bridesmaid dresses. She wasn't just a helper, she was my co-pilot. She handled pushy vendors with a fierceness I just didn't have and calmed all my anxieties with a simple, "I've got this." Looking back, I can see how she wove herself into every single detail. It felt like our asterisk wedding, not just mine and Liam's. Now, a key person in our wedding party was Liam's cousin, Ethan. He was the best man, a charming, life-of-the-party guy who was basically Liam's brother. At the time, Jessica was engaged to her own fiancé, Mark, a quiet, wonderful guy who absolutely adored her. We were supposed to be this perfect foursome, the kind of friends who would grow old together and have backyard barbecues with our kids. Jessica would often joke about how well she and Ethan got along during the planning. "We're the perfect team," she'd laugh. "He negotiates, I charm, we should go into business." I just laughed with her, totally clueless. I saw their friendship as a good thing, a sign our families were blending. The thought that there was anything more to it was so impossible it never even crossed my mind. After all, trust was the foundation of our friendship. I trusted her completely. We all even took a trip together, me, Liam, Jessica, and her fiancé Mark, about 6 months before the wedding. We rented a cabin, went hiking, and played board games by the fire. I remember one night, Jessica and I were sitting on the porch and she squeezed my hand and said, "I am so happy for you, Chloe. You and Liam are the real deal. It makes me believe in forever." I felt so lucky, so blessed to have a love like Liam's and a friend like her. I had no idea a storm was brewing right under my nose. The ceremony was a beautiful blur. Standing up there with Liam, with Jessica right next to me holding my bouquet, I felt this incredible sense of peace. We said our vows, our voices shaky with emotion, and when the officiant said, "You may now kiss," the whole church just erupted. Our reception was at this gorgeous botanical garden with fairy lights draped in the trees. It was magical. Our first dance was to our song Asterisk, the one from our third date. As Liam spun me around, I caught Jessica's eye. She was standing there, smiling, and made a big show of wiping away a tear. I smiled back, my heart just swelling with love for everyone in that room. About an hour later, I decided to sneak away to the bridal suite for a minute to touch up my makeup and just breathe. I handed my bouquet to Jessica and told her I'd be right back. The hall was buzzing, the band was playing, and everyone was laughing. I took a little side hallway that the staff used as a shortcut. It was pretty dimly lit. As I rounded a corner, I heard these hushed, intense voices, coming from a little alcove where they kept garden supplies. I slowed down, not wanting to interrupt. And then I heard Jessica's voice, low and urgent. "You can't say things like that here, Ethan. Someone will hear you." My blood ran cold. Ethan, Liam's cousin, the best man. I froze, hiding behind a big potted fern, my heart starting to pound against my ribs. Ethan's voice was desperate. When can I say it? I'm going insane watching you stand next to her pretending, watching you with Mark. This is killing me." "We had a deal," Jessica whispered back, her voice sharp. "We said we'd be careful. We'd wait until after the wedding dust settles. We can't blow everything up now. Not here, not on her day." Her day asterisk, my day. The words just hung there in the air, feeling heavy and poisonous. This wasn't just some drunken mistake. It was a planned, calculated affair. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. The secrecy, the way they were talking. This was real. Then there was a sound that I will never ever forget. A soft sigh and then the unmistakable sound of a kiss. It wasn't a quick peck. It was long and desperate and passionate, and it made my stomach lurch. I peeked around the fern, my body shaking. And I saw them. I saw his hands in her hair, her back pressed against the same wall I was hiding behind. The maid of honor dress, the one we picked out together, was now a symbol of the worst betrayal I could imagine. I couldn't breathe. My perfect day, my perfect friendship, it all just shattered in that one awful moment. I backed away slowly, my hand clamped over my mouth to stop a sob from escaping. The joyful music from the reception hall felt like it was mocking me. I somehow stumbled back into the bright, loud reception hall. The world felt like it was spinning. Liam was across the room, laughing with his uncle, his face just glowing with happiness. How could I tell him? How could I possibly ruin this moment for him and stain our wedding day with something so ugly? My first instinct was to just run and hide and completely fall apart. But I couldn't. I was the bride. All eyes were on me. So I did the only thing I could do. I put on a smile. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I felt like my face would crack. I went to the bar and asked for a glass of water, my hand shaking so badly I could barely hold it. I had to get through the next few hours. The thought of a public screaming match was horrifying. It would become the only thing anyone remembered about our wedding. A few minutes later, it was time for speeches. My dad went first, then Liam. He spoke about our love story, and his voice was so full of emotion that the tears I was holding back finally started to fall. Everyone just saw a happy bride, moved by her husband's words. No one knew they were really tears of grief. And then the DJ called up my maid of honor. Jessica walked to the microphone, looking like an angel. She smiled right at me, a smile that now just looked twisted and fake. "To Chloe and Liam," she began, her voice so confident. "I've known Chloe for 20 years and I have never seen her as happy as she is today. She is the sister of my heart. We've been through everything together, and Chloe, seeing you find a love as true as Liam, it's all I've ever wanted for you." Every word felt like a stab in the gut. Every sentence about loyalty and sisterhood was a complete and utter lie. I watched her, my mind just a tornado of memories. Her helping me pick out my dress, her holding my hand that very morning when I was nervous. It was all an act. I just stared at her with a frozen expression. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and expose her right then and there. But then I saw my mom's happy face in the crowd and Liam's parents beaming with pride. I couldn't do it. I couldn't ruin it for them. So I just sat there and I clapped when she was done. Later, during the cake cutting, she stood right next to me, laughing as Liam and I smeared icing on each other's faces. To everyone else, she was the perfect maid of honor. To me, she was a stranger wearing my best friend's face. I finally escaped to the bridal suite again, locking the door this time. I just sank to the floor, my dress pooling around me, and let out the silent scream that had been stuck in my chest. Panic set in, my breath coming in short gasps. Shock, loss, grief, and a white-hot anger were all hitting me at once. My phone buzzed, a text from Jessica. "Where are you? Everyone's asking for you. Bouquet toss is next." Seeing her name made me feel sick all over again. I took a deep breath. I had a choice. I could confront her now and cause a massive scene, or I could hold it together, protect this day, and deal with the fallout later. It felt impossible, but as I looked at myself in the mirror, I knew I couldn't let them steal this from me. They had already taken so much. They weren't getting my wedding day, too. I wiped my tears, Ixed my makeup and walked back out, armed with my terrible secret. The rest of the night was a total blur. I danced with my dad, I laughed with my cousins, and I just held onto Liam's hand like he was my anchor. Every time I saw Jessica, my stomach twisted. I even watched her dance with her fiancé, Mark, and felt this wave of pity for him. He was just as clueless as I had been a few hours ago. I did my best to avoid her, but as the night started to wind down, I knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't let her walk away thinking she'd gotten away with it. A public scene was out, but a private confrontation was going to happen. I saw her near the gift table getting her things. Liam was saying goodbye to some relatives. This was my chance. I walked over, my heart pounding. "Jess," I said, my voice was surprisingly calm. "Can I talk to you for a second, in the garden?" She looked up and her smile faltered a little. "Of course, is everything okay?" I didn't answer. I just walked through the doors into the cool night air. The garden was empty. I went to a bench far away from everyone else and sat down. She followed, looking confused. "Chloe, you're scaring me. What's wrong?" she asked. I looked at her, really looked at her. "I was in the staff corridor earlier," I said, keeping my voice even. I saw it, a tiny flicker of panic in her eyes. "Oh," she said, trying to sound casual. "I didn't see you." "No," I said, "you were busy, you and Ethan." The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "You told him you had a deal," I went on, my words like ice. "You said you'd wait until the wedding dust settles. You didn't want to blow things up on her day. My day." She just stared at me, horrified. The mask was completely gone. "Chloe, I can explain," she stammered, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away like she was on fire. "Explain what, Jess? How long this has been going on? How you could stand next to me at the altar today? How you could give a speech about sisterhood and loyalty when you were betraying me in the worst way possible?" Tears started streaming down her face. "It's not what you think, it just happened." "Don't," I said, my voice finally shaking with rage. "Don't insult my intelligence by saying it just happened. I heard you. You have a plan. You've been lying to me, to Liam, and to Mark for who knows how long. You looked me in the eye all day and lied." "I didn't want to hurt you," she sobbed. "You didn't want to get caught, asterisk," I shot back. "Our friendship is over, Jessica. It ended tonight in that hallway. You are a stranger to me." I stood up, looking down at the girl who used to be my best friend. "Please, Chloe," she pleaded. "Don't do this. 20 years. 20 years is what makes this unforgivable," I said. "You took 20 years of trust and you lit it on fire. For what? For him." I didn't wait for an answer. I turned my back on her and walked away, back to my wedding. The confrontation wasn't loud, but it was the moment I chose myself over a friendship that had defined half my life. When I got back inside, Liam knew instantly something was wrong. The fake smile was gone. "What is it? What's wrong?" he asked, his brow furrowed with worry. I couldn't talk about it there. "Let's just say our goodbyes," I whispered. "I want to go." He didn't push. He just put his arm around me and led me through the last of the goodbyes. I saw Ethan across the room watching me nervously. He knew I knew. I gave him one look of pure disgust and turned away. Jessica was already gone. The ride to our hotel was silent. We walked into our honeymoon suite, filled with roses and champagne, and the wall I'd been holding up for hours finally came down. I collapsed onto the bed and just sobbed, this deep, gut-wrenching sound of pure heartbreak. Liam was right there, holding me as I fell apart. Through my tears, I told him everything. I told him what I saw, what I heard, and about the confrontation with Jessica. I watched his face go from confusion to disbelief, and then to a quiet, simmering rage. He was silent for a long time after I finished, just holding me. His own cousin, his best man, had done this. "I am so sorry, Chloe," he finally said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm so sorry my family brought this poison into our day, that they did this to you." There were no excuses for Ethan, just pure, unwavering support for me. And in that moment, I knew I had absolutely married the right man. Our wedding day was ruined, but our marriage had started on a foundation of total honesty and unity. We were a team. The next morning, our phones were blowing up with messages from Ethan and Jessica, and confused texts from family who had sensed something was wrong. We turned our phones off. We ordered room service, and we spent the first day of our marriage just being together, processing everything. The betrayal didn't break us. If anything, it made us strong. Lord, it's an unimaginable situation, and I had to make split-second decisions under the worst pressure imaginable. I have to ask, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have confronted her publicly, waited like I did, or something else entirely? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give it a like. It's been a year since that day. We never went on our honeymoon, we just used the time to heal. Liam cut ties with Ethan completely. It divided the family for a while, but once the full truth came out, most of them sided with us. Mark, Jessica's fiancé, found out shortly after. I'm not sure who told him, but he left her. The last I heard, Jessica and Ethan are together, but a lot of their old friends have cut them off. I blocked her number and I've never spoken to her again. Sometimes it feels like a phantom limb, you know. The space where my best friend used to be still aches. But then I remember the coldness of her betrayal and the strength I found that night. Losing her was like losing a part of myself, but I've learned that sometimes you have to amputate something toxic to save the rest of you. My wedding day might have been the scene of a horrible betrayal, but it was also the day I married my true partner, and the day I learned that I'm strong enough to survive anything. My mom's boyfriend called my wife ugly, so I ruined Thanksgiving. At least, that's the accusation my entire family is throwing at me right now. It all started with a single, whispered comment I was never supposed to hear, and my wife definitely wasn't. After she overheard him say she wasn't pretty enough for me, I made a decision. I banned him from our home. I drew a line in the sand to protect the person I love most. Now my phone is a non-stop barrage of angry texts. My mother is threatening to disown me, and the whole family is furious with me for destroying our most cherished holiday. They say I overreacted, that I was needlessly cruel and uncompromising. But was I the one who was wrong? You be the judge. Was I wrong to ban my mother's boyfriend from Thanksgiving after he made a degrading comment about my wife? That's the real question here. Some would say a family bond should be able to withstand a thoughtless remark. That forgiveness is what holidays are all about. Others would argue that protecting your spouse, especially in your own home, is your number one job. My family sees me as a villain who chose stubborn pride over peace. I think I was a husband defending his wife's dignity. The fallout was catastrophic, ending in a shouting match on my front lawn and a holiday left in pieces. Now I'm just left wondering if I could have, or should have, handled it any other way. To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand my wife, Anna. We've been married for 5 years and she's the anchor of my life. It's that simple. She's not just the person I love, she's the person I admire. She's a pediatric nurse, and she spends her days with a level of patience I can barely imagine, caring for sick kids and comforting their terrified parents. She has this quiet strength, a way of making everyone around her feel seen and valued. When she smiles, it's not just some polite gesture, it's a genuine room-lighting event. She's funny, whip-smart, and has a laugh that can cut through my darkest moods. To me, she isn't just pretty. She's the standard I measure beauty by. Our home, the one we bought together 2 years ago, is our sanctuary. It's a reflection of her warmth, filled with things we've built, plants she's nurtured, and just an overwhelming sense of peace. Hosting Thanksgiving was supposed to be a celebration of all that. The first time we were opening our sanctuary to the entire family. Then there's my mom. I love her, I really do. For most of my life, it was just us. She's strong-willed and fiercely protective, but her judgment in men has never been great. After my dad left, there was a string of, let's just call them, unimpressive characters. But 2 years ago, she met Rick. And Rick was different. He was stable. He had a decent job in logistics, owned his home, and seemed to genuinely care for my mom. In the beginning, I was just relieved. My mom was happy, truly happy, in a way I hadn't seen in decades. Rick, however, was a different story for me. He's one of those old-school guys who thinks telling it like it is a virtue, even if it is rude, inappropriate, or just plain mean. He wraps his insults up as just joking or brutal honesty. At family gatherings, he'd make these little digs. He once told my cousin, who was struggling to find a job, that not everyone is cut out for the corporate world. He commented on Anna's cooking once, saying it was pretty good for someone who works so much, as if her career was a handicap. Each time I'd feel this flash of anger, but Anna would just give my hand a gentle squeeze under the table, her silent way of saying, "It's not worth it, let it go." And my mom would just laugh it off. "Oh, that's just Rick being Rick." That phrase grated on me every single time. Rick being Rick had become a get-out-of-jail-free card for casual cruelty. But I tolerated him. I put up with it because he made my mother happy, and her happiness means the world to me. So when we decided to host Thanksgiving, there was no question that my mom and Rick were invited. Anna, being the generous person she is, was determined to make it perfect for everyone. For weeks, she planned the menu, tested recipes, and sketched out seating charts. She bought new placemats and a ridiculously expensive centerpiece. She wanted my mom to be proud of us, to see the life we had built. The house smelled of cinnamon and cloves for a solid week. We were a team, a well-oiled machine of turkey brining and pie baking, and despite the stress, we were happy. We were excited. That excitement, that peace, was about to be shattered by 3 careless, ugly words. The incident happened the Saturday before Thanksgiving. My mom and Rick stopped by, supposedly to drop off extra folding chairs, but really it was an inspection tour for my mom. Anna was in her element, proudly showing my mom her new serving dishes and explaining her complex, military precision oven schedule. I was in the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of wine to offer them. Rick followed me in, leaning against the counter with that self-satisfied smirk he always wears. "You've got a good setup here, kid," he said, looking around our kitchen. "This is a nice place. You're doing all right for yourself." Thanks, Rick, I said, trying to be polite. Anna's really the one who made it a home. He let out this low, gravelly chuckle. Yeah, she's a real homemaker. He said the word like it was from a museum. He took a swig of the beer he'd brought and looked me up and down. You know, he started, lowering his voice into that conspiratorial man-to-man tone I've always hated. I've always been a bit surprised by you and her. I stopped the corkscrew halfway in, surprised how. He leaned in closer. Well, you're a good-looking guy, always have been. You could have had your pick of the litter. And Anna, she's a great girl, don't get me wrong, really sweet. But you really outkicked your coverage. I'm just surprised you ended up with someone, well, I always thought you'd be with someone prettier. The words just hung there in the air, thick and poisonous. Prettier, not pretty enough. My wife, the woman I adore, the center of my universe, was just reduced to a cruel rating by this blowhard in my kitchen. For a second I was just stunned. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. My blood started to boil. I mean, white-hot rage rising in my chest. I opened my mouth to say something that would have scorched him where he stood. But before I could, I saw it. A flicker of movement in the reflection of the microwave door. Anna. She had been walking into the kitchen. She stopped just inside the doorway, hidden from Rick's view but not from mine. She heard it. She heard every word. The vibrant, happy woman who had been buzzing around her home moments before was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize. Her face was pale, all the light just drained from it. Her shoulders slumped, like the weight of his words had physically crushed her. Her smile was gone, replaced by a trembling lip. She didn't make a sound. She just stood there, completely still, her eyes wide with a deep, silent hurt that was 1,000 times worse than any scream. She held my gaze in the reflection for a single, heartbreaking second before she quietly turned and walked away. In that moment, the wine, Thanksgiving, the chairs, none of it mattered. The sanctuary had been breached. The person it was built for had been wounded inside its walls. And the man responsible was still standing there, smirking, totally oblivious. The world just narrowed to the space between me and Rick. The hum of the fridge suddenly seemed deafening. My hands were clenched so tight the wine cork dug into my palm. What did you just say? My voice came out low, dangerously calm. Rick, clueless, just chuckled again. Hey, just being honest. It's guy talk. Don't be so sensitive. You know she's not a classic beauty, but she's got a good heart. That's what counts, right? Get out, I said. His smirk finally disappeared. What? Get out of my house now. My mom must have heard my tone because she rushed into the kitchen, a worried look on her face. What's going on? What's wrong? Your boyfriend just told me my wife isn't pretty enough for me, I said, my eyes still locked on Rick. He said it in my home, and my wife heard him. My mom's eyes widened and she immediately went into damage control. Oh, honey, no, Rick, you didn't. Rick threw his hands up, getting defensive. It was a joke. I was complimenting the kid, saying he's a good-looking guy. My God, can't anyone take a joke anymore? Insulting my wife is not a joke, I snarled. Calling her ugly is not a compliment. It's the pathetic rambling of an insecure man who gets his kicks tearing people down. Now, for the last time, get out. Okay, let's all just calm down, my mom pleaded, stepping between us. Rick, apologize, tell him you didn't mean it. Rick scoffed. Apologize for what? Telling the truth, for having a private conversation. That was it, the final nail, the complete lack of remorse, the doubling down. He's not welcome here anymore, Mom, I said, my voice cold as ice. Not now, not for Thanksgiving. He is not to set foot in this house again. My mom looked at me horrified. What? You can't be serious. You'll ruin Thanksgiving. It's in 5 days. He already ruined it, I shot back. This is my home. Anna's home, and I will not have someone who disrespects her like that sit at our table. He is banned, that's final. You're being ridiculous. You're tearing this family apart over one stupid comment, she cried. It wasn't misunderstood. It was crystal clear. And the only thing being torn apart right now is my wife's self-esteem, thanks to him. The argument raged. My mom accused me of being dramatic, of trying to drive a wedge between her and Rick. Rick just stood there, muttering about how oversensitive and whipped I was. I didn't care. I went to the front door and opened it wide. Leave, I said. My mom gave me a look of pure fury, a look that said you've crossed a line you can't uncross. She grabbed her purse and they stormed out, slamming the door. The silence they left behind was heavy and suffocating. I went looking for Anna and found her in our bedroom, curled up on the bed, facing the wall. She was trying to be quiet, but I could see her shoulders shaking. I sat down next to her, and the second I wrapped my arms around her, she just broke. As I held my wife, listening to her cry over being told she wasn't beautiful enough in her own home, my resolve didn't just harden, it turned to steel. There was no negotiation. There was no compromise. Rick was not coming back. I didn't know it then, but the war had just begun. The next few days were a special kind of hell. The festive spirit in our house just died. Anna tried to pretend she was okay. She'd keep going with the holiday prep, mechanically peeling potatoes, but her heart wasn't in it. The light in her eyes was gone. I'd find her just staring into space, and I knew she was replaying Rick's words in her head. She started avoiding mirrors. One evening, she came out of the bathroom wearing one of my old baggy sweatshirts and asked, "Do you really think you could have done better than me?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. It was so full of pain and self-doubt, all planted there by Rick. I spent the next hour just holding her, telling her all the reasons I loved her, how beautiful she was to me. But I could tell the words weren't fully landing. The poison had seeped in. Seeing her so broken fueled my anger into a wildfire. Banning Rick wasn't just about punishment anymore. It was about proving to Anna that our home was a place where she would always be safe and honored. Meanwhile, the family pressure campaign kicked into high gear. It started with my mom. Her texts were a mix of rage and guilt-tripping. "You are being selfish and ruining this family's holiday. Rick is willing to apologize. You need to be the bigger person. How can you do this to me?" When I didn't budge, she sent in the flying monkeys. My Aunt Carol called, her voice dripping with disappointed sympathy. "Honey, I know you're upset, but Thanksgiving is about forgiveness. Your mother is devastated." My cousin Steve texted, "Dude, you're being a hard ass. Just let the old guy come. It's one day." An uncle I hadn't spoken to in 6 months sent a 2-word message: "Grow up." Every message painted me as the villain. I was the unreasonable one, the drama queen. They talked about the comment like it was a minor slip-up, not a deep, personal attack on my wife. Not a single person asked how Anna was. No one seemed to care that she was the actual victim. Her pain was just an inconvenient detail getting in the way of their holiday. I tried to explain. To my aunt, I said, "This isn't about forgiveness, it's about boundaries. He insulted my wife in my home and there have to be consequences." Her response: "Well, boundaries have their place, but so does family." The message was clear. My wife's dignity was less important than their comfort. The isolation was intense. It felt like Anna and I were on a tiny island and our whole world was trying to drown us in guilt. I started to have moments of doubt. Was I being too rigid? Maybe I should just let him come, suffer through a fake apology, and endure a few miserable hours for the sake of peace. But then I would look at Anna, forcing a smile as she chopped celery, her eyes still shadowed with hurt, and my resolve would snap right back. Peace at what cost? My wife's safety. My own self-respect. No, the line was drawn. Let them be angry. This was my house, my wife, my choice. Thanksgiving morning arrived with a quiet, somber dread. The huge feast we had planned for 15 was officially canceled. I'd sent a group text 2 days earlier. Due to a private family matter, we will no longer be hosting. The fallout was another storm, but at that point I was numb to it. Anna and I decided we'd just have a quiet day by ourselves. We'd still cook the turkey. It had been brining for 2 days, and eat on the coffee table watching movies. It was a sad shadow of the day we had imagined, but it was all we had. Around 1 p.m., just as I was pulling the turkey from the oven, the doorbell rang. A jolt of anxiety shot through me. We weren't expecting anyone. Anna looked at me, her eyes wide. I put the roasting pan down and walked to the door, my heart pounding. I looked through the peephole and my blood ran cold. It was my mother, and standing right behind her, holding a green bean casserole like a peace offering, was Rick. I took a deep breath, opened the door just enough to block the entrance with my body, and said, "Mom, what are you doing?" "We're here for Thanksgiving," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "Rick is here to apologize, and we are going to put this all behind us." "No," I said, my voice flat. "I told you he is not welcome in this house." Rick shuffled forward, not meeting my eye. "Look, kid, I'm sorry, okay? I was out of line. Stupid thing to say. Your wife's a wonderful woman. Now can we just come in and eat?" It was the most insincere, begrudging apology I had ever heard. He wasn't sorry for what he said. He was sorry he got in trouble for it. The apology wasn't for Anna. It was a key to get through the door. "That's not good enough, Rick," I said, "and you are not coming in." My mother's face transformed from strained cheer to pure rage. "I am your mother," she hissed. "You will not speak to me like that on my own son's doorstep. We are coming inside." She tried to push past me. I held my ground, keeping the door firm. "Mom, stop. You are not welcome here if he is with you. You have to leave." "You would turn away your own mother on Thanksgiving," she shrieked. Her voice was cracking. Neighbors were walking their dogs, getting their mail. We were becoming a front lawn spectacle. "I'm not turning you away, Mom. I'm turning him away. You're the one choosing to stand with the man who insulted my wife instead of with your own son." "He said he was sorry," she screamed. "I don't care." The shout ripped out of me, raw and full of a week's worth of anger. "This is my home. That is my wife in there crying because of him. You don't get to show up here after I told you not to and demand to be let in. You have no respect for me, for Anna, or for our home." In a fit of rage, my mom shoved the casserole into Rick's hands, and with this guttural scream, she grabbed the decorative pumpkin arrangement by my door and hurled it. It smashed against the garage door with a sickening crunch, sending bits of gourd and plastic leaves everywhere. That was it. The moment the holiday wasn't just ruined, but utterly obliterated. Rick, finally seeing this wasn't going to work, muttered to my mom, "Come on, Carol, let's just go. He's crazy." My mom shot me one last look of such profound hatred it physically hurt. "Don't you ever call me again," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You are no son of mine." She turned, and they walked to their car and sped away, leaving me in my doorway amidst the wreckage of a pumpkin and my family. I closed the door, leaned my forehead against it, and all the fight just drained out of me. The house was silent except for the smell of turkey and the sound of my wife softly crying in the living room. So that's where we are. Thanksgiving is over. My porch is clean, but my family is a wreck. My mom is sticking to her word. She hasn't spoken to me since. The family has mostly taken her side, calling me the cold, unforgiving son who ruined the one day a year everyone is supposed to come together. They argue that one stupid comment shouldn't have the power to do this, that I should have just accepted the apology for the sake of peace. But every time I think that, I picture the look on Anna's face, the utter devastation. My main job as a husband is to protect her, to make her feel loved and safe, especially in our home. I feel like I did that. I stood up for her when no one else would. But in doing so, I might have torched my entire family. I might have lost my mother. I took a stand, and the collateral damage has been immense. This whole thing has forced me to ask some brutal questions I still don't have answers for. So I have to ask you to be the judge. This is where I need your verdict. Was I wrong to ban my mom's boyfriend from Thanksgiving in the first place? Was his comment really bad enough to justify that? Or was I, like my family says, being overly sensitive? Is there a point where you just have to swallow your pride and take a fake apology for the good of the family? Or did I draw the line in the right place? Was the real unforgivable act when my mom showed up with him anyway, completely ignoring a clear boundary I had set? Does that make her the one truly at fault? Let's separate the two things. Did the boyfriend deserve the initial ban, and did my mother deserve the consequences for defying it? Let me know in the comments what you think. Am I the bad guy for drawing a line in the sand? Is my mom the bad guy for trying to bulldoze right over it? Is Rick the ultimate villain? Or in the end, does everyone just suck here? Tell me what you would have done. Would you have prioritized your partner's feelings or family harmony? And while you're down there, please consider liking and subscribing. It means a lot, and it ensures you won't miss the next story. In the end, I keep coming back to one simple thing. My priority was to protect my wife, to defend her and make sure she felt safe in her own home. Maybe there was a more diplomatic way to do it. Maybe a cooler head could have found a compromise that I was too angry to see. But in that moment, with the sound of her cry in my ears, it felt like the only choice I had. It was an act of loyalty to my wife, but it came at the cost of loyalty to my mother. And now I'm left to wonder if that price was too high. I'm genuinely waiting to see what you all think. Tell me which value matters most here: absolute loyalty to your spouse, the grace of forgiveness, or preserving family unity, and why. Thanks for listening. My entire world fell apart in a single conversation. I'm going to take you back to the exact moment I confronted my girlfriend about cheating. The rage and disgust were so real, and the weight of that moment is something I will carry forever. This is what happened. It's funny how your brain tries to protect you, how it saves the good memories in this perfect, sun-drenched amber, keeping them separate from the rot that came later. When I think about the beginning with Sarah, that's all I see. Sunlight. We met in the spring. I know it's almost too cliché, but it's true. The city was finally thawing and people were spilling out of cafes, blinking in the weak, hopeful light. I was sitting alone, reading a book, and she just appeared. She asked if the seat across from me was taken, and her voice was like warm honey. I remember looking up and feeling the air get gently pushed out of my lungs. She was beautiful, but it was more than that. She had this energy, this vibrant, electric aura that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. We talked for 3 hours that day. We didn't even notice the staff stacking chairs and sweeping the floor around us. We talked about everything and nothing. Books, dreams, the weirdest foods we'd ever eaten. It felt less like a first date and more like catching up with a friend I hadn't seen in 1,000 years. The first 6 months were a blur of pure, dumb happiness. The sickeningly sweet, rom-com kind of love you roll your eyes at in movies. We were inseparable. We spent weekends exploring little towns upstate, getting lost on purpose. We'd cook messy dinners together, dancing around my kitchen to old soul music with flour on our clothes. She had this way of looking at me, a smile that was just for me, that made me feel like I could tear down a mountain with my bare hands. She remembered everything. The name of my childhood dog, the fact that I hated cilantro, my ridiculously complicated coffee order. She'd leave little notes for me to find, tucked in my jacket pocket or stuck to the bathroom mirror. "Have a great day, I'm already counting down the hours until I see you," one said. I kept them all in a little box, a treasure chest of our perfect world. My friends loved her instantly. Of course they did. She was charming, witty, and could make anyone feel like the most fascinating person in the room. "You really lucked out, man," my best friend Mark told me one night. "She's a keeper, don't mess this up." The thought of messing it up was terrifying. For the first time, I felt like I had something genuinely precious, something I couldn't replace. I was all in. I tore down every wall I'd ever built and let her in completely. We talk about the future, not in a pressured way, but in a dreamy, excited way. We talked about moving in together, getting a dog, a goofy golden retriever we'd name Gus. We planned trips to places I'd only seen in magazines. We were building a life, or at least drawing up the blueprints. And I believed in those blueprints with every part of me. I trusted her. That's the part that guts you looking back, the trust. It wasn't just a feeling, it was a fact of my life. Sarah loved me, I loved her, and the sky was blue. Those were my truths, and I was living in the warmth of that certainty with not a single cloud in the sky, or so I thought. The change was subtle, so subtle I didn't even notice it at first. It was like the temperature dropping a single degree. You don't grab a jacket, but some small part of you notes the chill. It started with her phone. Her phone, which used to be tossed on the coffee table, suddenly became part of her hand. It was always with her, always face down on the table at dinner, always clutched in her hand when she went to the bathroom. I remember the first time it felt truly weird. We were on the couch watching a movie, my arm around her like always. Her phone buzzed on the end table. Normally she'd ignore it. This time her whole body tensed. It was a micro-expression, a flash of something panic in her eyes. She angled her body away from me, a movement so slight I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it, and typed a rapid response. When I casually asked, "Everything okay?" she nodded a little too quickly. "Yeah, just work stuff." Work stuff became the excuse for everything. The late-night texts that lit up our dark bedroom. The hushed phone calls she started taking in the other room. "I just have to take this, it's my boss." She'd slip out of bed, closing the door softly, and I'd lie there in the dark, a knot of unease tightening in my stomach as I listened to the muffled sound of her voice. I kept telling myself I was being ridiculous, insecure. Her job was demanding. I needed to be a supportive boyfriend, not a suspicious one, so I pushed it down. But then other little cracks started to appear. Our plans would change at the last minute. "Hey, so sorry, something came up at work. I have to bail on din." The first time I understood. The second time I was disappointed. By the fourth or fifth time, that disappointment had soured into a quiet resentment. Our weekends, once sacred, were now full of her needing to run errands alone or meet up with some friend I'd never even heard of. The affection started to fade too, not all at once but a slow erosion. The spontaneous kisses stopped. She stopped grabbing my hand when we walked down the street. When I'd hug her, she felt stiff, hesitant. It was like hugging a polite stranger. I tried talking to her about it, my heart pounding with fear. Hey, I started, my voice shaking a little. Is everything okay with us? You just seem distant. She looked at me with wide eyes, a perfect performance of innocence. What? No, of course not. I'm just so stressed with work. It's been brutal. I'm sorry if I've been distant. I don't mean to be. She'd pull me into a hug, and for a second it would feel almost normal again. Almost. But the doubt had already taken root like a poisonous weed. The worst part was how she made me feel crazy. I'd mention her being on her phone all the time and she'd laugh. Oh my God, you're being so paranoid. It's just my group chat. Do you want to see it? It was a calculated move. She knew I'd say no because what kind of controlling monster demands to see his girlfriend's texts? She knew it would make me feel ashamed of my own intuition. And it worked. I started to question my own sanity. Was I just insecure? Was I sabotaging the best thing that ever happened to me? I felt like I was losing my mind, living in two different realities. The one where she loved me and was just stressed, and the one where my gut was screaming at me that something was deeply wrong. That feeling just wouldn't go away. It was a low, constant hum of anxiety, and it was getting louder every day. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. It's weird, the little details you remember from the worst days of your life. It was a Tuesday, it was drizzling, and I'd just gotten home from the gym. That knot of anxiety had been my constant companion for weeks. The distance between us had become a chasm. We were basically roommates who occasionally shared a bed, and the silence in our apartment was deafening. That night, Sarah said she was going out for drinks with colleagues to celebrate finishing a project. Another last-minute plan. I watched her put on her makeup, and she looked like a stranger to me. There was a brightness in her eyes, an excitement I hadn't seen directed at me in months. It was a sharp, physical pain in my chest. She gave me a quick, sterile peck on the cheek at the door. I won't be too late, she said. Don't wait up. And she was gone. I just stood in the hallway listening to the silence. The apartment felt huge and empty. The feeling of being paranoid, of being crazy, was overwhelming. I needed to know. I felt like if I didn't get an answer, I would actually lose my mind. Her laptop was on the coffee table. It was an older one she barely used, but her iMessage was still synced to it. A feature we set up ages ago because it was convenient. Now, it felt like a loaded gun sitting in the middle of the room. My heart was hammering. My hands were shaking. I felt disgusting, like I was violating her privacy. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to walk away, to just trust her. But the wounded part of me, the part that had been quietly screaming for months, took over. I sat down and opened the laptop. And there it was. The screen lit up with a conversation. The name at the top was Alex. I didn't know any Alex. The messages went back months. My world didn't shatter. It just dissolved. The floor fell away, the walls turned to smoke. All the air left the room. I scrolled up, my thumb moving on its own. It started innocently, but the tone shifted quickly. There were inside jokes, pet names. I can't stop thinking about last night. When can I see you again? My eyes scanned the words, but my brain couldn't process them. It was like reading a foreign language that I suddenly, horribly understood. There were pictures of them at dinner. A selfie of them in a park, his arm around her, the same smile she used to give me now aimed at him. There were explicit plans, hotel rooms. The lies she told me were all laid out. I'll tell him I'm having dinner with my team. That was tonight. That was right now. And then I saw the words that broke me. The words burned into my memory forever. A message from her, sent just a few weeks ago. I love you, it said. You know that, right? He's just comfortable. You're what I want. He's just comfortable. Comfortable. The word echoed in the silent apartment. I was comfort, a placeholder, the warm body she came home to while she was out building a real life with someone else. The treasure chest of notes, the talks of our future, Gus the golden retriever, it was all a lie, a performance, and I was the unsuspecting audience of one. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there, the laptop screen glowing in the dark, and felt nothing. A profound, terrifying emptiness. It was shock. My brain couldn't compute the betrayal. I must have sat there for an hour just staring, rereading the same messages over and over as if the 10th time they might mean something different. They never did. The truth was right there, stark and digital. And as the seconds ticked by, the numbness started to fade, and something else rose in its place. A cold, hard, crystalline rage. I knew exactly what I had to do. I was going to wait for her to come home. The sound of her keys in the lock was like a gunshot in the silent apartment. I'd been sitting on the couch in the dark for what felt like an eternity, the closed laptop on the coffee table in front of me. I hadn't moved. I just sat there, replaying every moment of our relationship, seeing it all through this new, sick filter. Every "I love you," every laugh, every plan for the future, all of it was tainted. She walked in humming, happy. "Hey, you're still up," she said, her voice bright. She flicked on the entryway light and her smile faltered when she saw me sitting in the dark. "Everything okay? Why are the lights off?" I didn't answer. I just watched her take off her coat and hang up her purse. The casual, normal movements of a woman coming home to her comfortable life. She walked into the living room, her brow furrowed. "Babe, you're starting to scare me. What's wrong?" I finally looked at her, really looked at her. And I didn't see the woman I loved. I saw a stranger, an actress who had played a role flawlessly for almost 2 years. The rage I'd been nursing was now a roaring fire in my chest. I spoke and my voice was unnervingly calm, like it belonged to someone else. "How was dinner with your team?" She was taken aback. A flicker of confusion, then her mask of concern slipped right back on. "It was good, fine, a little boring, work things." She tried to laugh, but the sound died in her throat. "Why are you being so weird?" I just pointed to the laptop. "You left your laptop open." The color drained from her face. Instantly. The cheerful facade, the practiced concern, it all crumbled, leaving behind pure, raw panic. Her eyes darted from my face to the laptop and back again. She didn't have to ask. She knew. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "Don't," I said, the word coming out sharp as glass. "Don't you dare lie to me, not now." She sank onto the armchair across from me, her body folding in on itself. The silence was thick, suffocating. I wanted her to say something, scream, cry, confess, anything. But she just stared at the floor. "Who is Alex?" I asked. The name felt like poison in my mouth. She flinched like I'd hit her, still nothing. "Who is he, Sarah?" I pressed, my voice rising, the calm finally breaking. "I want you to tell me. I want to hear you say it." She finally looked up, her eyes full of tears. I felt no pity, just a deep, visceral disgust that churned in my stomach. I felt like if she touched me, my skin would crawl. "It's not what you think," she whispered. A horrible, ugly laugh escaped my lips. "Not what I think. I read it all, Sarah, all of it. The texts, the pictures, the hotel plans, you telling him you love him, you telling him I'm just comfortable. So please enlighten me. What part am I not thinking correctly?" I was on my feet, pacing. There was too much energy in the room. I felt like a caged animal. "How long?" I demanded. "How long has this been going on behind my back?" She was sobbing now, those big, gasping sobs. "I don't know, a few months." "A few months," I spun around. "The messages go back a year, a year. Was any of this real, any of it?" My brain was broken, and I had this desperate need for an explanation. Like if I just had more information, more details, I could somehow put the pieces back together. I started firing questions like a machine gun. When did you meet him? Where? How many times? Was it in our bed? Don't you dare lie to me, was it in our bed? No, never here, she cried, shaking her head. Oh, well, thank you for that. Thank you for the decency to not bring your affair into the bed we share. That makes it so much better. My voice was dripping with sarcasm, so bitter it tasted like acid. Was it love at first sight? Like us? Did you talk for 3 hours in a cafe and feel like you de-known him forever? Did you do that with him too? Every question was another twist of the knife for both of us. I wanted to hurt her. I wanted her to feel a fraction of the pain that was ripping me apart. It just happened, she pleaded. I never meant for it to. I was going to end it. End it when? After one more night in a hotel. After one more I love you text. When were you going to end it, Sarah? Or were you just going to keep me around? You're comfortable. Reliable, stupid boyfriend who paid half the rent. I leaned down close to her face. Look at me, I said, my voice dropping to a low growl. Look me in the eye and tell me you love me. She couldn't. Her eyes darted around the room, anywhere but at me. And that was it. That was the moment the last, tiny, idiotic flicker of hope died. I hate you, I said, the words feeling both freeing and devastating. I look at you and I feel nothing but disgust. Everything we had, everything I thought we were, you made my life a joke. I stood up straight. The rage was suddenly gone, replaced by a cold, absolute finality. I felt hollow. Get your things, I said, my voice calm again. What? She looked up, her face a mess. Get your things. Pack a bag and get out of my apartment. Please, she begged, trying to reach for me. Please, we can talk about this. We can fix this. I recoiled from her like she was toxic. Fix this. There is no this anymore. There is no us. You burned it to the ground, now get out. The fight was over. All that was left was the wreckage. As she stumbled toward the bedroom, her sobs echoing in the hall, I just stood in the middle of the living room, surrounded by the ghosts of a life I thought was mine. The screaming was the easy part. The real pain was just about to begin. She was gone in 15 minutes. I heard the sounds from the bedroom, drawers opening, the rustle of clothes, the zip of a bag. I didn't move. I just stood frozen, listening to the soundtrack of my life being taken apart. The final click of the front door closing was like a punch to the gut. Then silence. The kind of silence that's so heavy it feels like a physical presence, filling your lungs. For the first few minutes, I just stared at the door, half expecting her to walk back in and say it was all a horrible nightmare. The door stayed closed. I guess you'd call it shock. My brain just refused to accept this new reality. I walked through the apartment like a ghost. Her side of the bed was empty. Her smell lingered on the pillow. In the bathroom, her toothbrush was gone, but her shampoo was still in the shower. I felt nothing and everything all at once. There was this gaping hole in my chest, but around the edges a storm of emotions was swirling. Anger, sadness, and a deep, burning humiliation. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was a fool. The comfortable boyfriend, how many people knew? Did our friends know? Did they laugh at me? The question started looping in my head almost immediately. My hand was trembling as I picked up my phone. I had this primal urge to call someone, to say it out loud and make it real. I scrolled to Mark's name, but I couldn't press call. What would I even say? Hey, my world just ended. Sarah's been cheating on me for a year. Admitting it meant it was true. Instead, I did something I still can't really explain. I started cleaning. I stripped the sheets off our bed and threw them in a heap. I walked around the apartment and gathered every trace of her. The little notes I'd treasured went straight into the trash. The framed photo of us laughing on the nightstand, I placed face down in a drawer. I was desperately trying to erase her, to sanitize the crime scene, to get back some tiny piece of control when I had none. My jaw was clenched so tight my teeth ached. My body was still primed for a fight that was already over. I wanted to punch a wall, to scream until my throat was raw. All I could manage was this low, animal sound that was half sob, half growl. Around 3 a.m., the numbness wore off, and the wave of sadness I'd been holding back finally crashed. I was sitting on the living room floor, staring at the empty space where she used to sit, and I just broke. It was a physical force that buckled me over. I cried in a way I hadn't cried since I was a little kid, ugly, loud, and uncontrollable. I was crying for the loss of her, sure, but it was more than that. I was crying for the future I thought I had, and for the person I was just a few hours ago. That happy, trusting guy died in this living room tonight. I was grieving him, too. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the words on the screen. He's just comfortable. The depression began to set in like a heavy, leaden blanket, draining all the color from the world. How do you untangle your life from someone else's? How do you learn to sleep in a bed that suddenly feels like a vast, empty continent? How do you silence the voice in your head that keeps asking, why wasn't I enough? That question was the most painful part of it all. The immediate aftermath wasn't a breakup. It was a demolition, and I was left standing alone in the rubble. The days that followed were a gray blur. It felt like living underwater. Simple tasks like getting out of bed or making coffee required a monumental effort. I was bouncing wildly between anger, sadness, and a scary numbness. A random song on the radio could send me into a spiral. I did what a lot of people do. I channeled the anger. I went to the gym and worked out until my arms felt like they'd fall off. I went for long runs, just focusing on my feet hitting the pavement, trying to outrun the thoughts in my head. It was a way to feel something without letting it completely consume me. The hardest part by far was battling the shame, that feeling of being less than. Her betrayal planted this toxic seed of self-doubt that I had to fight every single day. Talking about it was the first real step. A few days later, I finally called Mark. My voice cracked as I told him everything. He didn't offer easy answers, he just listened. And then he said, "Her cheating is a reflection of her, man, not of your worth. Don't forget that." I clung to those words like a life raft. Slowly, I started to rebuild. I learned that healing isn't a straight line, it's a mess. There were good days where I felt a flicker of my old self and terrible days where the grief felt brand new. I had to learn to be patient with myself. I rearranged the apartment furniture. I bought new sheets. I started a pottery class on Thursday nights, the night she used to have her work dinners. I started filling the spaces she left with things that were just for me. I never spoke to her again. She sent a few long, pleading emails, but I deleted them without reading them. I realized my healing couldn't depend on her apologies. I had to find closure on my own. I had to learn to trust my own gut again, the feeling I had ignored for so long. It's been over 2 years now. The scars are still there, but they're not angry and red anymore. They're more like pale lines that trace the story. The pain has lost its sharp edges. Looking back, the biggest lesson is that you can survive things you absolutely think you can't. The betrayal felt like an ending, and it was. The end of a relationship, the end of an illusion. But it was also a beginning. It forced me to figure out my own worth, to build a stronger foundation for myself that wasn't dependent on someone else. I'm stronger now. More cautious, yes, but more in tune with myself. I don't ignore that little voice in my head anymore. I listen to it. The experience didn't make me bitter, which I think is the real victory. It made me realize that people are complicated, and sometimes they do terrible things because of their own emptiness, not because you're not enough. It's a painful lesson, but a powerful one. I didn't get the future with the golden retriever named Gus, but I got myself back. And in the end, that's a love story worth telling. Thank you for listening to my story. I know this is a heavy topic, and it wasn't easy to share, but I think it's important to talk about these things. If you've been through something similar, or if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Reading other people's stories and knowing I wasn't alone was a huge part of my own healing. If you made it this far, please consider liking this and subscribing. It helps more than you know. Thank you again for being here. You're not alone. I thought buying my girlfriend's family $1 million house for Christmas would be the greatest moment of our lives. I was picturing tears of joy, this huge wave of gratitude that would finally wash away all the tension poisoning our relationship. What I got instead was a list of demands. The next 48 hours didn't just blow up our relationship. They uncovered a secret so dark that I had no choice but to walk away and never look back. This is the story of how I bought my girlfriend's broke family $1 million house, and how their entitled reaction exposed a betrayal that forced me to end it all. Let me tell you how my $1 million Christmas gift turned out to be the best money I ever spent, because it saved me from a lifetime of misery. It all started about 2 years ago. My name's Alex, I'm 32, and let's just say I got lucky. A tech startup I co-founded in my mid-20s was acquired, and I walked away with a small fortune. My net worth is around $5 million, but I've never let it define me. I drive a normal sedan, live in a nice but not flashy house, and I'll take a good burger over a 5-star meal any day. For me, money was never about showing off. It was about freedom. Then I met Clara. She was 28, vibrant, funny, and didn't seem to care at all about my bank account, which was unbelievably refreshing. For the first year, things were perfect. We traveled, we laughed, and I really felt like I'd found a partner who saw me for who I was. The first time I met her family, I saw where she got her charm. They were warm, welcoming, and full of life. They were also completely drowning. Her parents, in their late 50s, were buried under a mountain of debt from bad business ideas and just plain bad decisions. Her older brother was pretty much always unemployed, chasing some get-rich-quick fantasy, and her younger sister was a professional student, racking up loans for a degree she never seemed to get any closer to finishing. Their house was literally falling apart. The roof leaked. The plumbing was a joke, and every time we all got together, you could feel this quiet, desperate anxiety about money buzzing under the surface. At first, I tried to help in small ways. I'd cover dinner, buy nice Christmas gifts, and I even loaned her dad some money that I knew I'd never see again. But it was like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in it. As our second year together started, things began to change. The little hints became straight-up requests. The gratitude was replaced with expectation. I remember one Sunday dinner perfectly. I had just paid for a huge car repair for her parents, no big deal. Her mom took my hand, looked at me with these sad, pleading eyes and said, "Alex, you are such a good man. You know, a asterisk real asterisk man looks after the whole family. He makes sure they have a solid roof over their head. The hint was about as subtle as a sledgehammer. Her dad would sigh dramatically whenever a truck commercial came on, muttering about how his old pickup was a death trap. Her brother started emailing me links to his brilliant Kickstarter ideas, asking for seed money. They saw me as an ATM, a walking, talking fix for decades of their own bad choices. And the worst part, Clara started to become their spokesperson. Anytime I tried to say I was uncomfortable, she'd get defensive. They're my family, Alex. They're just struggling. You have so much, it's not even a rounding error for you. Then she started using the one word that felt like a knife in my gut: stingy. After everything I'd done, she actually called me stingy because I wasn't willing to just fund her entire family's life. The fights got more and more frequent. I felt used. I loved Clara, I really did, but I was starting to suffocate under the weight of her family's expectations. It felt like I was constantly being tested, and I was failing because I wouldn't just open up my bank accounts and say, "Have at it." So I came up with a plan, a grand gesture. I thought maybe they just need to feel secure. Maybe if I take away their biggest stressor, that crumbling house, the pressure will just go away. I told myself their entitlement wasn't malicious, it was just desperation. I decided I was going to solve their problem for good. I was going to buy them a house. I thought this one massive act of generosity would prove my love and commitment to Clara and all of them. I thought it would fix everything. I was so wrong. I put the plan into motion in early October. This was going to be the ultimate Christmas surprise. I spent weeks secretly working with a realtor in their hometown looking for the perfect place. Not just any house, but one that screamed new beginning. I finally found it, a beautiful, newly renovated 4-bedroom house in a quiet suburb. It had a big backyard, a modern kitchen, enough space for everyone. The price was $450,000. I paid cash. But I knew the house wasn't enough, so I hired a financial advisor to discreetly figure out all their debts, mortgages, credit cards, personal loans. It all added up to about $120,000. I set it up to have it all paid off on Christmas Eve. I wanted to give them a truly clean slate. Then I spent another small fortune furnishing the whole place. Beds, couches, TVs, a fully stocked kitchen. I wanted them to just walk in and start their new life. I even bought a reliable, certified pre-owned car for her parents and had it parked in the garage with a giant red bow on it. When I added it all up, the house, the debt, the furniture, the car, it was close to $1 million. It was an insane amount of money, but I told myself it was an investment in my future with Clara. An investment in peace. I could see it all so clearly in my head. I'd drive them to the house on Christmas Eve, pretending we were going to look at Christmas lights. I'd lead them to the door, hand them a little box, and inside would be the keys and the deed. I pictured Clara's mom just breaking down in tears of relief. I pictured her dad, a proud guy broken by failure, finally standing tall again. And most of all, I pictured Clara looking at me with pure love, all our fights forgotten as she realized how committed I was. I was buying a fairy tale ending. Christmas Eve came. We were all at her parents' falling apart house for dinner. The air was thick with the usual passive aggression. Her brother made a snide comment about my fancy watch. Her sister complained that her student loan payments were like more than rent, looking right at me. Her mom went on about a neighbor who just declared bankruptcy, her eyes lingering on me. It was so predictable, but for the first time it didn't bother me. I just smiled, holding my $1 million secret. They had no idea. All this anxiety was about to disappear forever. After dinner, I said, "Hey everyone, I heard the next neighborhood over has some incredible Christmas lights. Let's all go check them out." They grumbled, but they came. As I drove, my heart was pounding. This was it. This was the moment. I pulled up in front of the beautifully lit house, the one I owned. "Wow," Clara's sister said. "Imagine living there." I turned off the car. "All right, everybody out." They all looked at me confused. "What are you doing, Alex?" Clara asked. I just smiled, walked up the path and stood by the front door. "Your Christmas present is here." I pulled out a small velvet box and handed it to Clara's mother. Her hands were trembling as she opened it. Inside, on a satin pillow, was a single, shiny key. She looked from the key to me, totally confused. "I don't understand," she whispered. I took a deep breath. "That's the key to your new home. I bought it for you. It's fully paid for, completely furnished, and as of an hour ago, all of your family's debts are gone. This is yours. Merry Christmas." For a second there was dead silence, just the hum of Christmas lights from across the street. Clara's mom stared at the key, then the house, then me. Her face just crumpled and she started sobbing, not a sad sob, but a sound of pure shock and relief. Her dad's jaw was on the floor. He looked like he'd been hit by lightning. Then the dam broke. Clara's mom lunged forward and gave me a bone-crushing hug, just weeping into my shoulder. "Thank you, God, thank you," she cried over and over. Her dad, a man I'd never seen get emotional, had tears streaming down his face. He just kept shaking his head, muttering, "I can't believe it. I just can't believe it." Clara let out a scream of pure joy and jumped into my arms, kissing me. "You did this. You really did this. Oh my God, Alex, I love you. You're the best person in the world." Her brother and sister were running around the yard like little kids, pressing their faces against the windows. It was chaos, but it was happy chaos. It was exactly what I had dreamed of. For a few perfect minutes, I was the hero. I unlocked the door and they flooded in. The reactions were explosive. They ran from room to room, freaking out over the new furniture and the fancy appliances. Within minutes, Clara was posting a video tour to social media, her voice giddy. "You guys will not believe what my amazing boyfriend just did for my family." I stood in the entryway, smiling, feeling the tension of the last year finally melt away. It had worked. And then the first crack appeared. It was small. We were all in the kitchen and Clara's dad was running his hand over the granite countertop. He turned to me and said, "This is incredible, Alex. Truly. You know, this backyard is big enough for an in-ground pool. We should get some quotes this spring." I blinked. We hadn't been in the house for 10 minutes. I forced a weak smile. "Maybe, let's just settle in first." A few minutes later, Clara's mom pulled me aside. "Alex, honey, quick question," she said, her voice low. "The master bedroom has that beautiful bathroom. Since this is the family house, your father. And I will take that one. The kids can figure out the others." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. Then came the brother. He found me by the garage. He had this smug grin on his face. "So, two-car garage, huh? You only got them one car. Kinda looks empty. Thinking of getting a second one to match." Each comment was a tiny paper cut on my good mood. This wasn't gratitude. This was inventory. They were treating this $1 million lifeline like a new toy they were already planning to upgrade. The fairy tale was starting to curdle. The last straw of the night was Clara. I found her in the living room telling her brother and sister where to move a lamp. She looked at me, her smile bright but her eyes looked calculating. "Babe, we need to talk about property taxes and upkeep. And insurance. Since your name's on the deed as the grantor of the trust, you'll be handling all that every year, right? It's just easier that way." My stomach dropped. I just stared at her. The woman I loved, the woman I had just moved mountains for. She hadn't asked. She told asterisk me. She saw this monumental gift not as an act of love, but as the opening of a new, permanent line of credit. The sting of her calling me stingy came rushing back, but now it made a horrifying kind of sense. She didn't just think I was stingy, she believed my money should be her family's money. I managed a tight nod. We can talk about the logistics later, Clara. Her face tightened with annoyance. Well, we need to figure it out soon. We can't be expected to afford the upkeep on a place like this. And there it was, the entitlement, raw and immediate. The house hadn't solved their problems. It had just given them a more expensive stage to perform them on. I went to bed that night in the guest room of the house I bought, a cold dread creeping in. I hadn't just made $1 million mistake. I had uncovered a truth about the woman I loved that was far uglier than any leaky roof. But their reaction, as gross as it was, wasn't even the worst part. It was just the final piece of a puzzle I'd been putting together for weeks. You see, when I handed them those keys, I already knew something they didn't. I knew a secret about Clara, and their greedy, grasping behavior that night just confirmed the decision I had already made. The house was no longer a gift. It was a test. Let's rewind 6 weeks. Clara told me she was going on a girls' trip to Miami for a long weekend. I didn't think anything of it. I told her to go have fun. We'd been fighting a lot about her family, and I figured some space would be good for us. But while she was gone, something felt off. Her texts were short and vague. When I tried to call, it usually went straight to voicemail. She'd call back hours later, sounding flustered, saying she was in a loud club or had bad service. A little seed of paranoia started to grow in my mind. It was her behavior when she got back that made it sprout. She was suddenly super protective of her phone, which was never an issue before. She'd tilt it away from me or snap it shut if I walked in the room. She started talking about a new friend she made, a guy who was hilarious and so interesting. My gut, the same gut that made me millions by trusting my instincts in business, was screaming at me that something was very, very wrong. I wrestled with it for days. I felt like a monster for even thinking about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I hired a private investigator. I gave him the dates of her Miami trip and the name of the hotel she said she was staying at. I felt disgusting, like I was betraying her. But I just knew she had already betrayed me. I just needed proof. The Pies report hit my inbox a week later. I sat in my office staring at the subject line for an hour, terrified to open it. When I finally did, my world just shattered. It was all there. Hotel security footage of her with a man, not her friends. Photos of them holding hands on the beach. Credit card receipts showing she hadn't stayed at the hotel she told me, but at a much fancier resort in a suite booked under his name. And the worst part, the investigator recovered data fragments from the hotel's public Wi-Fi. He found pieces of messages she'd sent from a private social media account. One message to a friend made me physically sick. It read, "Alex is getting so tight with his money lately. It's exhausting. It's nice to be with someone who knows how to treat a girl." Attached was a picture of a new diamond bracelet. The man was a wealthy investor we had met at a charity event a few months earlier. The entire trip was a lie. She was with him. The grief was immediate and overwhelming, but right underneath it, a cold, hard anger started to form. I replayed every fight we'd had about money. Every time she called me stingy, it all clicked. This wasn't about love for her, it was a business transaction. I was the safe, long-term investment. He was the fun, flashy one. She was hedging her bets. Her family's endless money grubbing wasn't just a flaw. It was a philosophy they had raised their daughter on. Get what you can, however you can. They hadn't just raised a daughter, they had trained an operator. In that moment, my grand Christmas plan changed. The house purchase was already in motion. It was too late to stop it, but its purpose was no longer about generosity. It was about clarity. I called my lawyer the next day. We restructured the whole thing. The house was not deeded to them. It was put into a revocable trust, and I was the sole trustee. That meant I could take it back at any time for any reason. We then drafted a residential use agreement, basically a behavioral contract disguised as a lease. It said that to stay in the house, they had to follow certain rules. Rule 1, no more asking for money or making guilt-tripping comments. Rule 2, the able-bodied family members had to show me proof they were looking for jobs or going to school. Rule 3, they had to pay a token amount of rent, $2,000 a month, not because I needed it, but to force them to have some skin in the game. If they broke the rules, the trust would be revoked, and they'd have 30 days to get out. The house was no longer a gift of love. It was a trap, a beautifully furnished $1 million trap. And watching them on Christmas Eve, already complaining and demanding more, I knew they were walking right into it. The gift came with strings they were about to use to hang themselves. Christmas morning, I woke up on an uncomfortable new couch in the guest room of the house that was supposed to be our happy future. Downstairs, I didn't hear quiet gratitude. I heard boisterous planning. I could hear Clara's brother talking loudly about turning the basement into a man cave with a proper home theater. I heard her mother on the phone, bragging to a relative, "Of course, Alex will be covering the taxes." He insisted. I showered, got dressed, and a cold calm settled over me. There was no more pain, just a grim sense of purpose. I walked downstairs. The whole family was in the massive living room, sipping coffee, looking smug. Clara saw me and beamed, morning handsome. Dad was just saying we should get a landscape architect out here next week to talk about the pool. I didn't smile back. "Everyone sit down, we need to talk." My tone cut right through the happy mood. The smiles vanished. They slowly sat down on the brand new sofas. I stayed standing in the middle of the room. I felt like a CEO about to announce layoffs. "First," I started, my voice completely flat, "we need to clear up some confusion about this house." I pulled a folder from my briefcase. "This house isn't a gift, not the way you think." Confusion washed over their faces. Clara's dad scoffed. "What are you talking about, Alex? You gave us the key." "I gave you the key to a property held in a revocable trust, and I am the sole trustee," I said, letting the legal words hang in the air. "You are not owners. You are tenants, and your tenancy is conditional." I opened the folder and took out the residential use agreement. This document, which you'll all need to sign to stay here, lays out the conditions. To summarize, no more asking for money. No more passive-aggressive comments. The adults in this family will show me monthly proof of job applications or school enrollment. And finally, you will pay $2,000 a month to the trust to cover utilities and contribute to upkeep. The silence was now thick with shock and anger. Clara's mother was the first to speak, her voice a high-pitched squeak. "A asterisk payment. You want us to pay you to live in the house you gave asterisk us." "It's a trick," her brother shouted, jumping up. "This is some sick, controlling power play." Clara just stared at me, her face pale. "Alex, what is this? Is this a joke? After all this, you're putting conditions on us. You're charging my parents rent." "I'm not charging them rent," I said calmly. "I'm setting boundaries. I gave you $1 million fresh start. The only condition is that you start acting like it, that you take some responsibility for your own lives instead of just finding a new, more expensive way to be dependent." The room blew up. They were all yelling at once. I was a manipulator, a liar, a monster. I had dangled this dream in front of them just to snatch it away. And Clara was the loudest, her voice dripping with venom. "I cannot believe you," she shrieked. "You are just as stingy and controlling as I thought. You do this huge thing just to hold it over our heads, to control us. My mother was right about you." I just let her scream. I waited until she ran out of breath. I looked at her, and for the first time I felt nothing. No love, no pity, just the end. You're right about one thing, Clara, I said softly, my voice cutting through the noise. I am controlling, for instance. When I suspected you weren't being honest with me, I took control of the situation. I hired someone to find out the truth. Her face went from red with rage to white with fear. She knew. In that instant, she knew exactly what I meant. I know about Miami, Clara, I said, my voice low but carrying to every corner of the room. I know you weren't on a girl's trip. I know you were with him. I have the hotel records, the photos. I even have the messages you sent your friends, laughing about how you were with someone who knows how to treat a girl, while your stingy boyfriend was back home. You could have heard a pin drop. Her whole family just turned and stared at her. Her denial was weak, pathetic. No, that's not true, you're lying. I didn't even bother to answer her. I just stared, my expression unblinking. The truth was suffocating her. She finally broke, burying her face in her hands and sobbing. But these weren't tears of remorse. They were the tears of someone who got caught. I turned back to her stunned family. This house, I said, my voice cold and loud, was a final test. I wanted to see if, given everything you ever wanted, you'd be grateful, or if you'd just be greedy. You gave me my answer in less than 10 hours. I paused, letting that sink in. Then I delivered the final blow. The test is over, you all failed. Clara, we're done. I looked at all of them, her mother, her father, her siblings, all staring at me in horror. The trust is hereby revoked. As of this moment, you have 30 days to vacate the premises. I want you all out by New Year's. I picked up my briefcase and walked to the door. I paused with my hand on the handle and turned back to look at the wreckage of the family I almost joined. Merry Christmas, I said, you're out. The second that door clicked shut, the screaming started. I could hear it even through the solid wood. It was a mess of rage, disbelief, and dramatic wailing. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove, the sound of their implosion fading behind me. I felt strangely calm, totally empty. It was that weird quiet that comes after a hurricane has finally passed. The next few days were an absolute flood. My phone blew up with calls and texts from the whole family. They came in stages. First, the rage. Voicemails from Clara's brother threatening me. Texts from her mom calling me the devil. Then the bargaining, a tearful voicemail from her dad. Alex, son, please, we can talk about this. Maybe the monthly payment was a shock. We can work something out. Don't do this to us. Don't do this to Clara. Finally, the pathetic apologies. Clara left me dozens of messages. They were a masterclass in manipulation. I made a terrible mistake, Alex. I was confused. He meant nothing. Please, I love you. You can't just throw away 2 years. I'll do anything. I'll cut my family off. I'll go to therapy, anything. Just don't take the house away from my parents. Even in her apology, she was still trying to use my generosity for her family. She wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry she got caught and was about to lose her VIP pass to my bank account. I never answered a single call or text. I blocked all of them. Then came the public smear campaign. Just as I expected, Clara went on social media. She posted a long, tearful story about her toxic, controlling ex who bought her family a house just to use it as a weapon to emotionally abuse them. She painted herself as the victim, a poor girl who fell for a rich monster. For a second I was worried, but my real friends and business partners knew me, and Clara made a huge mistake. In her whole sob story, she conveniently left out the part about her cheating, but she forgot about that giddy video she'd posted on Christmas Eve, calling me the amazing boyfriend. When a few of my friends who'd seen it started asking questions in her comments. Wait, I thought he was amazing 2 days ago. What changed? Her whole story fell apart. The slander campaign just fizzled out, drowned by her own hypocrisy. The eviction was clean. My lawyer handled it. They tried to squat, of course, claiming they had residency rights, but the revocable trust and the use agreement I'd had them sign were ironclad. On January 15th, a sheriff escorted them off the property. I had movers pack up their old stuff from the crumbling house and put it in a storage unit, which I paid for 3 months. Everything new I had bought, from the TVs to the forks, stayed. It's been almost a year since that Christmas. I've never seen or spoken to Clara or her family again. That beautiful house is no longer a monument to a failed relationship. I rented it out to a young doctor and his family. They send me a Christmas card, and the rent is always on time. They're just grateful, normal people. That $1 million was the most expensive lesson I've ever learned. For a long time I was angry, at them for their greed, and at myself for being so naive. I let my love for Clara blind me to who she really was and the toxic, parasitic family she came from. I wanted to be a savior, but you can't save people who don't want to be saved. You can only enable them. But now I see it differently. That wasn't $1 million lost. It was $1 million I spent to buy my own freedom. It saved me from a marriage built on a lie and from a family that would have bled me dry for the rest of my life. When you think about it that way, it was a bargain. It was the best money I ever spent. I've started dating again, cautiously. I recently met a woman who's my equal in every way. She has her own career, her own life. When I told her this story, she didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me with respect and said, "You did the right thing. You chose yourself." And I realized that's what it came down to. That grand gesture wasn't really for Clara's family. It ended up being for me. It was the act that forced me to finally choose my own peace. So that's my crazy story. Now I have to ask you, was I the bad guy for setting them up like that? Or was it a justified response to betrayal and greed? Let me know what you honestly think in the comments. I'll be reading them. And if you have a story about a gift gone horribly wrong or a relationship test that revealed a terrible truth, I want to hear it. Don't forget to like this video if you think they got what they deserved, and subscribe for more. Thanks for listening. You ever have that one person you tell everything to? Your vault, I did. And she used every single secret, every vulnerability I ever shared, as a weapon to destroy my life from the inside out. This is the story of how my best friend turned into my worst enemy. A story about how the person I trusted most could smile to my face while twisting my deepest fears into gossip designed to ruin me. It's a story about betrayal, yeah. But more importantly, it's about how you can survive it. Our friendship didn't start with some big bang. It was a slow burn, the kind that builds so steadily you don't realize it's become the most important thing in your life. Until it is. I met Maya in a training seminar for a job we were both starting. We were stuck in this sterile, windowless conference room, listening to a presentation on corporate synergy that could have put a hummingbird to sleep. I was doodling, just trying to stay awake, when I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Maya. She slid a piece of paper to me. On it, she'd drawn a perfect, hilarious caricature of the presenter, complete with a halo of Z's floating over his head. I had to choke back a laugh, and right there, a bond was forged over lukewarm coffee and mutual boredom. For the first few months, we were just work friends. We'd grab lunch, complain about our deadlines, and celebrate small wins with a drink after work. But it turned into something more and fast. Maya just had this incredible energy. She was bright, funny, and she really seemed to listen when you talked. She had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. Our conversation started stretching longer, shifting from office politics to our actual lives. We talked about our families, our terrible dating histories, our hopes for the future. I remember one night, maybe a year into our friendship, we were sitting in her apartment, surrounded by takeout boxes and cheap wine. I was going through a really rough patch. My long-term boyfriend had just broken up with me, and I was a complete mess. My self-esteem was shot. I confessed things to her I'd never said out loud, to anyone. I told her about my deep-seated fear of being alone, how I felt like I was fundamentally unlovable, a fear that had been planted in my childhood and had been whispering in my ear ever since. She didn't just listen. She validated every single thing I felt. She looked me right in the eye and said, "You are not unlovable. You are one of the most incredible people I know. He didn't see that, and it's his loss, not yours." She held my hand while I cried, and for the first time in weeks I felt a little glimmer of hope. She became my person, my rock. She was the one I called when I got a promotion, the one who showed up with ice cream and a bad rom-com when I was down. We had our own language, a shorthand of inside jokes and shared memories that made us feel like a tiny, two-person secret society. Our trust was built in thousands of those small moments. The late-night phone calls, the secrets whispered across a table, the unspoken promise that we had each other's backs, no matter what. I felt safe with her in a way I hadn't felt with anyone else. She knew everything about me, my wins, my failures, my insecurities, and most importantly, my deepest, darkest fears. I thought of her as my vault, an extension of myself. The idea that she would ever use any of that against me wasn't just unthinkable, it felt impossible. It would be like my own hand deciding to betray me. At their best, friendships can feel like that, a bond of pure belonging and unwavering trust, and ours felt like the best. I told her about my family struggles, the complicated relationship I had with my parents, and the pressure I felt to live up to their expectations. I told her about my work anxiety, the imposter syndrome that flared up every time I had to lead a big project, making me feel like a fraud who was just seconds away from being exposed. These weren't just complaints. They were pieces of my soul, vulnerabilities I only showed because I believed they were safe with her. She'd share her own struggles too, or so I thought. She'd talk about her career frustrations and bad dates, creating this perfect illusion of reciprocity. Our friendship was like a mirror, and I saw my own vulnerability reflected in her, which just made me trust her more. We were in this together. It felt like a safe harbor where I could be my most authentic, flawed self without being judged. Looking back, I can see the golden days were just a little too perfect, a little too shiny. But at the time, all I saw was the glow. The first crack was so small, I almost talked myself into believing it wasn't there. It was a hairline fracture in the foundation of our friendship that I quickly papered over with excuses. We were at a mutual friend's party, and I was telling a small group of people a funny but kind of embarrassing story about a recent date. Maya was across the room. A few days later, a colleague who was also at the party came up to me. "Hey," she said, "Maya was telling me about that disastrous date you had. Sounds rough." I just froze for a second. It wasn't a huge secret, but it was my story to tell. And Maya hadn't just repeated it, she had added her own little flourishes, her own dramatic flair, making the story sound more pathetic than funny. It was a subtle shift, but I noticed it. When I casually brought it up to her later, she just laughed it off. "Oh, come on, it was a funny story. I was just sharing. Don't be so sensitive." And because I trusted her. Because our friendship meant so much to me, I believed her. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was being too sensitive. Friends share stories. It's normal, right? But then other cracks started to show. I began to notice a pattern. She was a fantastic listener, but her listening was starting to feel less like empathy and more like data collection. She had this insatiable appetite for gossip. Whenever we were together, she would talk about our mutual friends behind their backs, always framing it as if she were concerned. "I'm just so worried about Sarah," she'd say, before launching into a detailed account of Sarah's money problems. "I really hope Mark is okay," she'd start, before spilling all the intimate details of his recent breakup. It made me feel uneasy, but I never called her out on it directly. Part of me was still convinced she had good intentions, and another, darker part of me was scared. If she was talking about them like this to me, was she talking about me to them? The thought was like a cold stone in my stomach, but I just pushed it down. No, she wouldn't do that to me. We were different. Our bond was special. I've heard that a person who is going to betray you often gets uncomfortable when you succeed, and looking back, I saw it happening. I started a new creative project, a blog where I wrote about my passion for classic films. It was something deeply personal. When I first told Maya about it, her congratulations felt hollow. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. A few weeks later, when I excitedly told her that one of my posts had been shared by a popular film critic, her reaction was lukewarm at best. "Oh, that's cool," she said, before immediately changing the subject to a problem she was having at work. Her emotional support just vanished, but so subtly that I questioned my own perception. Was I being a narcissist, expecting her to be as excited as I was? I made excuses for her. "She's busy," she stressed. "It has nothing to do with me." The biggest red flag, the one practically smacking me in the face, was how she acted when other people were around. In private, she was my warm, supportive best friend. But in group settings, something would shift. She'd get distant, sometimes even dismissive. She would make these little jokes at my expense, usually about the exact insecurities I had shared with her in confidence. They were always framed as innocent teasing, the kind of ribbing close friends do. But they always had this sharp, cruel edge that no one else seemed to notice. Once we were out for dinner with a group and someone mentioned their fear of public speaking. Maya turned to me and said with a huge smile, "Oh, you should talk to her about that. She's the queen of imposter syndrome. She's convinced she's going to be fired any day now, even after that big promotion." The table laughed and I forced a smile, but inside, I felt this hot, burning shame. That was a secret I had whispered to her in the middle of the night, a raw nerve I had trusted her with. And she had just served it up as a funny little anecdote for a group of acquaintances. When I tried to confront her about it later, she deployed the classic gaslighting defense. "What? It was a joke. God, you can't take anything seriously. I was just trying to relate to what everyone was talking about. Why are you trying to make this a huge deal?" She made me feel like I was the problem, that I was too sensitive, too dramatic. So I apologized. I actually apologized to her for being hurt. People who are preparing to betray you get irritated when you set boundaries, and my attempts to protect myself were twisted into attacks on her. I started to believe that the price of our friendship was just letting these things slide, accepting the little cuts as part of the deal. I ignored the cracks, ignored the warning signs, because I was terrified of losing the person I thought was my closest friend. The secret I'm about to share is hard to talk about. Even now, it's one of those deep foundational wounds that shapes who you are. You don't share it with just anyone. You share it with your vault. For me, that was Maya. For years, my family had been dealing with my father's gambling addiction. It was a secret we kept locked down tight, a source of immense pain, shame, and financial chaos that had colored my entire life. It was the reason I was so fiercely independent, why I worked so hard for my own financial security, and why I had so much anxiety around money and stability. It explained so many of my fears and motivations, and I told Maya everything. I told her about the late-night fights, the disappearing savings, the constant fear of losing our home. I cried as I told her about the shame I felt, the unfair weight it put on me, and the deep, complicated love I still had for my father. It was the heaviest secret I carried, and I handed it to her for safekeeping. She held me just like she always did and promised it was safe. "This stays between us," she swore. "Always." Around that time, we were both up for the same promotion at work. It was a big one, a huge step up in responsibility and pay. We'd both been working toward it for years. We even made a pact that we'd support each other no matter what. "We're a team," she said. "Whoever gets it, it's a win for us both. We'll celebrate together." I believed her. Our friendship was more important than any job. A little friendly competition is normal, but this was becoming something else. Something quietly hostile. The betrayal wasn't one big explosive event. It was a slow, calculated demolition. It started with whispers. A colleague mentioned to me in passing, "Hope everything's okay at home." Maya mentioned, "You've been under a lot of stress." I felt that jolt of alarm. But when I asked Maya, she was smooth as glass. "Oh, I just told them you had some family stuff going on so they'd cut you some slack. I was just trying to help you." She was playing the part of my protector, while planting seeds of doubt about my stability. The real devastation came a week before the final interviews. I started noticing people at work treating me differently. Managers, people on the hiring committee, were suddenly distant. They'd look at me with this mix of pity and concern. Meetings I was supposed to lead were reassigned. My input was ignored. I felt like I was being iced out, but I couldn't figure out why. I finally found out from another colleague, a kind woman from a different department named Chloe. She pulled me aside one afternoon, looking incredibly uncomfortable. "I don't know if I should be telling you this," she started, her voice low, "but you deserve to know what people are saying." She told me that Maya had been having concerned conversations with several senior managers, and our boss. She had weaponized my deepest secret, twisting it into a story about my professional incompetence. This wasn't just talking behind my back. It was deliberate, malicious sabotage. According to Chloe, Maya told them she was deeply worried about me. She said my family was in a catastrophic financial crisis because of my father's out-of-control gambling. She told them I was emotionally unstable, distracted, and couldn't possibly handle the pressure of a senior role. She painted me as a ticking time bomb, someone whose personal life was such a mess that it was bound to blow up at work. She even twisted my own anxieties, my own confessions of imposter syndrome, into proof that I didn't believe I could do the job. She took the sacred trust of our friendship and used it as a weapon to destroy my reputation. The most twisted part, she did it all under the guise of being a good friend. She was the loyal friend, worried about her unstable bestie taking on too much. She wasn't being malicious. She was being responsible asterisk. She was protecting the company from my inevitable breakdown. I felt the blood drain from my face. Every secret I had ever shared with her, every late-night confession, every moment of vulnerability, they all flashed before my eyes. They weren't moments of connection. They were ammunition. She had been collecting my fears, not to support me, but to use them against me when it counted. It became terrifyingly clear that she had never really been my friend. She was a predator who had seen my vulnerabilities and exploited them for her own gain. The promotion interview was just a formality. The decision had already been made. I walked into that room and was met with these patronizing smiles. The questions weren't about my qualifications or my vision. They were all coded questions about my ability to handle stress, my work-life balance, and whether I had support systems. It was humiliating, soul-crushing. I knew with a sickening certainty that I had already lost. 2 days later, they made the announcement. Maya got the promotion. She sent me a text that afternoon. So bummed we can't be co-managers, but I'm so excited. We have to celebrate. I just stared at the message, my hands shaking. The audacity, the sheer, cold-blooded nerve of it was just breathtaking. She didn't just steal a job from me. She stole my trust in other people. She took the most private, painful parts of my life and put them on display for her own benefit. The vault was never a vault. It was an armory, and she had just used every single weapon inside it to blow my life apart. The immediate aftermath was just shock. My mind couldn't process the depth of the betrayal. It felt like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me dizzy and breathless. For days, I walked around in a total fog, replaying every conversation, every shared secret, every memory of our friendship through this new, horrific lens. Everything was tainted. Every happy memory was now a scene from a horror movie where I was the only one who didn't know the monster was in the house. The grief was overwhelming. It wasn't just about losing a promotion. It was the death of a friendship that I thought was a cornerstone of my life. The loss of the person I called about everything. The professional fallout was fast and brutal. My reputation at the office was in shreds. I was no longer seen as a competent, rising star. I was a liability, a tragic figure to be pitied. Colleagues who used to ask for my advice now avoided making eye contact. I was left out of important meetings. My projects were scrutinized with an intensity that felt like harassment. I was living in the shadow of Maya's lies, and there was nothing I could do. How do you disprove a rumor that's rooted in a painful truth? You can't. So I stayed silent, and my silence was taken as proof. Maya, now my boss, was a master of subtle torment. She would micromanage my work, publicly question my decisions in team meetings, and assign me menial tasks way below my skill level. And she did it all with this veneer of professional concern. "I'm just trying to lighten your workload, given everything you're going through," she'd say with a sympathetic smile in front of everyone. She was continuing her performance as the caring friend, which only made me look more unstable when I bristled under her control. It was a masterclass in manipulation. The social fallout was just as bad. Our mutual friends were caught in the middle. Maya had spun her story so effectively that some of them pulled away from me. They saw her as the supportive friend dealing with a difficult situation and me as volatile and emotional. Others tried to stay neutral, which felt like its own kind of betrayal. Their silence felt like a passive endorsement of what she did. Friendships I thought were solid became strained and awkward. I felt completely and utterly alone, isolated by the web of lies she had woven. The emotional toll was the heaviest. I was drowning in this toxic cocktail of hurt, anger, and self-doubt. I was furious at her for her cruelty, but I was also furious with myself. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have missed all the signs, the gossiping, the subtle digs, the competitive streak? It was all there, and I had just ignored it. I questioned my own judgment, my ability to read people. If I could be so wrong about her, who else was I wrong about? Trusting anyone new felt impossible. My anxiety, which had always been a low hum in the background, became a roaring monster. I had panic attacks in the office bathroom. I couldn't sleep. I just felt this profound sense of shame, not just about my family's secret, but about being so completely fooled. This period was, without a doubt, the darkest of my life. It felt like I was drowning, and the person holding my head underwater was the same one who taught me how to swim. The pain was immense, not just because of what she did, but because of who she was to me. She hadn't just broken my trust, she had shattered my reality. Have you ever been through something like this? Trusted someone completely, only to have them use your vulnerabilities against you. It's a uniquely painful experience, and it can make you feel so incredibly alone. If you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear a part of your story in the comments. We need to talk about this more. Let's create a space where we can support each other and remember that healing from this is possible. Your story matters, and you are not alone. For months, I was trapped in this cycle of anger, grief, and feeling like a victim. I let what Maya did define me. My whole life was just a reaction to her betrayal. I'd spend hours replaying what she did, fantasizing about exposing her, about getting revenge. But I realized that wanting revenge just kept me chained to the trauma. I was giving her all my energy, even though she was gone from my personal life. She was still my boss, but I'd cut all personal contact. Yet she still controlled my emotional state. The turning point wasn't some dramatic moment. It was a quiet, internal shift. I was sitting in my apartment one Saturday morning, just staring at a wall, feeling that familiar wave of despair wash over me. I was so tired. Tired of being angry, tired of feeling helpless. And in that moment of pure exhaustion, a new thought broke through. All the noise. I cannot let her win. Her victory wasn't getting the promotion. Her ultimate victory would be my complete destruction. It would be me quitting my job, isolating myself, and living the rest of my life as a bitter, untrusting person. That's what she wanted, and I was handing it to her on a silver platter. I realized I had a choice. I could let her betrayal be the main plot of my life, or I could decide to write a new story, a story about resilience. The first step was taking back control. I knew I couldn't stay at that job. The environment was too toxic. Seeing her every day was like picking at a wound that would never heal. Quitting felt like letting her drive me out, but staying felt like a slow suicide of my spirit. So I started looking for a new job, secretly at first, and then with this growing sense of determination. Every application I sent, every interview I took was an act of defiance. It was me saying, "You don't control my career, you don't control my future." Next, I had to reclaim my own story. I couldn't undo the rumors, but I could change how I responded to them. I stopped being silent. I started having honest, hard conversations with the friends who had stuck around. I didn't share the raw details of my family's struggles. That secret was mine to keep now. But I told them I had been the target of a malicious campaign by Maya. I said, I shared things with her in confidence, and she used them to sabotage me. I know this puts you in a difficult position, but that's the truth. Some friends listened and got it. Some didn't. And that was a painful but necessary process. I learned who my real friends were, the ones who stood by me, not because they hated Maya, but because they trusted my character. The hardest step was confronting the betrayal internally. It meant letting myself feel everything without judgment, the rage, the sadness, the shame. I started journaling, just pouring all the toxic thoughts out of my head and onto the page. I went to therapy, which gave me a safe space to process the trauma with someone who could help me navigate it all. The turning point wasn't about confronting Maya. What could I say to her that she didn't already know? A confrontation would only give her another chance to gaslight me. Real vindication wasn't about making her pay. It was about me healing. It was the decision to stop being a victim in my story and start being the hero of it. It was the moment I took my power back, not by fighting her, but by focusing on myself. I started to rebuild my life, not around the hole she had left, but on the new, stronger foundation I was building for myself. It took a long time, but I got a new job, a better job at a company that actually valued my skills and treated me with respect. Leaving that toxic office was like walking out of a storm into the sunshine. I could breathe again. My confidence, which had been totally shattered, slowly started coming back. I started to trust my own abilities again. Looking back, what happened with Maya was the most painful experience of my life. But it was also a powerful, if brutal, teacher. It taught me that trust isn't something you give away for free. It has to be earned. And it taught me to pay attention to red flags no matter how small they seem. People show you who they are, long before they betray you. The little jokes at your expense, the casual gossip, the way they can't seem to be happy for your success, those aren't small things. They're cracks in the foundation. Don't ignore them. It also taught me the huge difference between a real friend and a toxic one. A true friend celebrates your wins with you and holds you up through your losses. A toxic person sees your vulnerability as an opportunity and your success as a threat. I learned to choose my vault with extreme care. Not everyone deserves to know your deepest secrets. Your vulnerabilities are precious. Only share them with people who have proven over time that they are worthy of that trust. Most importantly, this whole journey taught me about my own resilience. Forgiving Maya was a long and complicated process, and I had to learn that forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. It's not about saying what they did was okay. It's about releasing yourself from the anger and pain that ties you to them. Forgiveness is cutting that final cord so you can finally move on without carrying the weight of their betrayal. I learned that you can rebuild your reputation just by living your truth. Your character isn't defined by the rumors someone spreads about you. It's defined by your actions over time. By being consistently kind, competent, and authentic, you can rewrite the story. So if you're going through something like this right now, please, hear me. This is not your fault. You didn't deserve this. The shame you feel belongs to the person who betrayed you, not you. You are allowed to be angry. You are allowed to grieve. Take all the time you need to heal. But please, don't let their actions be the end of your story. You are so much stronger than you think. This pain will not last forever. You will find your footing again. You will learn to trust again, both in others and, more importantly, in yourself. This experience will leave scars, but those scars will become a map of your own strength, a testament to the fact that you survived. You can, and you will, build a life so full of joy, success, and genuine connection that the person who hurt you becomes nothing more than a distant, insignificant memory. Your story doesn't end with their betrayal. It begins with your decision to heal. Thank you for being here and for listening to my story. It's not an easy one to tell, but I really believe in the power of sharing our experiences. In the comments below, I want us to build a community of support. Share your stories, your lessons, your words of encouragement for others who are in the middle of this right now. Let's validate each other's pain and celebrate each other's resilience. And if this story helped you, please consider subscribing for more conversations about navigating life's challenges and finding your strength in the aftermath. Remember, no matter how deep the betrayal, you have the power to heal, to rise, and to reclaim your story. You are not alone.